Right, right now, there's no sound coming through. Try now. I can hear you. It worked for a second and then disappeared.
public comment of any members of the public who want to speak on this proposal? I don't see any public comments. So there's a few things we need to take care of. We need to make a secret determination. We need to close the public hearing if we feel like we've given ample opportunity for public comment. And then we have the possibility of taking action if we feel like we have all the information we need.
Anthony, before we do that, can I ask Dash a question? Sorry. In the staff report, you mentioned a parking agreement. Would you mind illuminating
Sure.
that?
So the comments in the staff report about the parking agreement have to do with the shared parking area with the neighboring storage use. If it is the same tenant, if I'm not mistaken, then you just need to show a merged parking plan. If they are two different tenants but sharing the use, you just need to show a parking agreement between those two tenants, even if they're owned by the same entity. That's how we've interpreted it. So it could just be a letter from oneself to itself in this instance.
Sarah, it's done so that the theory behind it is that I could potentially take this new building and sell it to someone else, and then they don't have any parking. They're owned by the same entity right now, but they are separate lots because they're different historical uses. One was the old German Lutheran church, and then the 500 section was the old brewery bottling facility. So it's just to give some more protection to say that they share parking, they're the same use, it's the same owner and operator, and that there's no there's no deficiency in parking for one facility or the other.
Thank you.
But we'll write that letter
You're
to
prepared
ourselves
to
and
do
send it to you. Yeah, we're gonna write
Okay.
a letter to ourselves.
Okay.
And so this is an unlisted action procedure.
Yes.
So we can declare ourselves lead agency.
You've already done
Oh,
that on
sorry. I didn't see that in the staff report. So we can make a determination on seeker. And if the commissioners feel it's appropriate, we can close the public hearing. And then I don't know if we feel we have enough information to take action on a conditional approval tonight. There are still the parking agreement outstanding, but that seems like we can expect to receive that as a matter of course.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay,
Shall I?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we issue a negative seeker. Oh my gosh, sorry. Getting a seeker determination.
okay, moving to a vote. Barbara Higbee, Suzanne Spellin, Sarah Wingert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So the motion carries. Negative declaration for seeker purposes. We still need to formally close the public hearing, right?
Yes. Yes, we do.
I make a motion that we close public comment and comment on this proposal for this hearing.
I'll second.
Moving to a vote, Barbara Higbee, Suzanne Spellin, Sarah Wingert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
I vote yes. So the public hearing is closed. And now, if we have enough information, we can make a conditional approval. If there's anything else we still need from the applicant in order to approve the site plan, we can also request that now.
I will make a motion that we approve this proposal conditionally upon two items. The first being the merged parking plan and the second being approval by SHPO for all proposed exterior materials, partnered with the planning commission receiving a copy of those proposed materials as well.
Moving to a vote, Barbara Higbee, Suzanne Spellin, Sarah Wingert,
Yes.
and Roddy Yagan.
Yes.
The motion, and I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. So the proposal is conditionally approved on those two stipulated conditions. You have everything you need for that?
Hold your mic closer to each other. We got the HVAC here is very loud and very.
If you can't hear yourself, they can't hear
Well,
you. Hear yourself.
They come close, talk loud.
try to make that,
And
do as much as
let
possible.
you know,
Excellent, thank you.
Don't lick his mic.
Moving on to the next item on the old business agenda. This is PLPC 2021-34, the bargain block.
Hello again, commissioners.
Hello?
So as you know, we've been here for this project for the last two meetings. This is the bargain block project of three different parcels across River Street from each other, from 547 River Street and 549 River Street on the west side of River and 558 on the east side. It's a combined mixed-use project as it's an extension of our waterfront master plan for Troy that we've been working on since we invested in the Collar City in 2006. So it's the new construction of a indoor rock climbing gym at the south parking lot of 547 River Street with some renovation space for that use in the basement of 547. There's a little bit of rehab work associated with 547, upgrade building systems, do some deferred maintenance, etc. North of that is the proposed senior housing facility with 123 units. 6 stories. No, Dash, you can pull those up for me too. And then lastly, across River Street is the proposed renovation of 558 River Street into a supermarket grocery store facility. 20,000 square feet.
A few more up. Yep, it's that one.
Renders. What do you guys want to?
So just to recap again, we were here last month, we had a public hearing. We talked about the project. We had a couple things to do. We're still waiting for the involved interested agency response. That timeframe has expired for seeker, so that's now expired. So we've met, I believe, the first interested agency. That should be done. The other thing we discussed at that meeting was the we talked a little bit about the bargain block project loading dock that would change. So we've addressed the comments in this last set that the commission has. I guess there we pretty much talked about everything last meeting. You see some renderings, we submitted renderings. So I think at that point, we're here to talk more about the renderings if that's what more about. Oh, also, we went into, additionally with the variance that we got on the previous project, we went to the zoning board of appeals for the parking issue. Concern with parking. That was approved by the DBA.
On the 6th, yeah.
I apologize if you just mentioned it. SHPO signed off on this today.
SHPO, yes, SHPO issued a letter of support saying that there was no adverse impact from a overall planning standpoint with what we proposed. That does not give us, however, our SHPO approvals. We still have yet to go through the whole gamut of submitting full architecturals and a part 2 for them for the rehabilitation of the historic properties.
We asked Chippo to nominate the building historic, so we can go through the process of the historic building. So that process has started. Their comments were related to the see the building rendering and all that other stuff as part of our submissions for that process.
And what exactly was the variance granted by the ZBA? What was?
We got a reduction in parking. We asked the ZBA based on the what
Senior housing.
common practice for the senior housing, more close to 1 per space, 1 space per unit. Your code currently is 2 spaces per unit. So we asked the ZBA to reduce that to 1 space per unit. That allows us, to be more accurately reflect, our actual usage. We still feel that, we'll have plenty of parking. We have over 500 spots in that area. Our estimate is that we're only going to use, 350 spaces for both uses that we've got. Board did grant that waiver
Yes.
for hearings.
Are there any other commissioner comments or questions?
I will have many questions, but I would prefer at this time, if acceptable, to listen to public comment first.
Yeah, we can open the floor to public comments. So if any members of the public are here to speak on this proposal, I'm going to ask that you please queue up in the first row, and whoever wants to stand up first to speak will recognize you. Please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes, since there are several other items on the agenda. And please do state your name and address for the record before you speak. You can just come directly to the microphone since you're the first one.
Good evening. My name is Drea Laenza. I live at 2227 Fifth Avenue, and you will be very happy to hear that I am not here to talk about King's Landing. I've been, can you hear me through my
Yes.
mask? Okay. I've been a member of Capital Roots for decades, long before they were actually called Capital Roots. And I think that they are a very valuable community organization doing really good work, especially around bringing food to food deserts in cities like Troy. And so I'm wondering why there's this plan to have Capital Roots like literally across the street. They've had their plan to basically have a grocery store already approved, and they have the funding in place, and all that stuff is moving into place. And now there's a plan for having another grocery store literally right across the street, similar kind of mission, rather than having 2 exactly the same things in this small amount of area. There are many other areas in Troy that could really use a grocery store. There had been one in downtown at the Troy Food Court. It would be great for it to be there. There are other places in South Troy, lots of places that could really benefit from having a grocery store. Having 2 of them competing with each other right in this like one little block doesn't really make sense. So I would say not doing the grocery store in competition with Capital Roots right across the street is the right way to go. The other thing that I was kind of amazed at is that there's going to be senior housing and a rock climbing gym as part of this complex. So as you can see, I'm a senior, and in my earlier days, I've done some rock climbing. I don't do that kind of stuff now because seniors in general are not too fond of falling and breaking bones. That can be a really traumatic thing. Seniors don't much go to rock climbing gyms. I don't know why they were paired together in one complex, but there are many other things that seniors like to do. Jogging or walking tracks, swimming pools. Swimming is a really good exercise for seniors and other people as well. So I'm just wondering, couldn't there be something that's more appropriate as an exercise for seniors in this particular spot? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Delarocco, IV. I live at 146 2nd Street. I'm here today. I came to Troy roughly 3 years ago from New York and fell in love with the city. It was, a great place to live. Found a great community. Found as many little hidden gems that I could online. And, the one thing that seemed to be missing, and a local community online also felt was missing, was a solid grocery. I searched and was able to find Capital Roots. I'm lucky enough to live close enough to the farmers market that I can just walk down there. But for most people, that's not accessible, and it's only there one day a week. Being involved with Capital Roots is, seeing the work they do is incredible, and the excitement over this new market that's coming is, felt throughout the organization, throughout the people involved, and throughout the city itself. Seeing a competing grocery store being placed 2 blocks away, it just seems like not only will it cause one to, rise up, or, the competition will be bad for both. If both fail, everyone in the community loses. And, I'm young, I'm investing in this city. I want to, make this my home for a long time. And I look at the South End, where there could be such a, a bustling marketplace, and it's so needed down there, and it's just not happening. You're shoving 2 of the same, wonderful services into 1 block. It doesn't make sense. And, I want to bring my business to this community. I want to invest in opening my own shops, and yet it just seems like there's a disregard for, the people who have been here and people who would like to be here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Seth Cohen. My address is 645 Stillwater. You might be thinking, why is somebody from Stillwater here to talk? I taught at the high school here in Troy for 33 years. Just retired a year ago. And in those 33 years, I spent probably 25 plus of those years working with Capital Roots, with my students, improving the city of Troy. We worked on community gardens, probably planted in those 25 years several hundred of the trees that you see along the streets, both in North Central, Central Troy, South Troy, around Freer Park. At that time, it was Capital District Community Gardens. But about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, Capital Roots began a new program with the youth in the city of Troy, the Urban Farm. Produce project, as it's called. It's up on 8th Street. If you haven't been there, hopefully you get a chance to get up there and take a look at it. But it's not just about growing food and working with those students. The idea was to empower those students to invest in their community. And that's what Capital Roots has done for 40 plus years. And it's my understanding that you folks have already approved their proposal for the phases once they move down to their urban center, their urban growth center. And had it probably not been for the pandemic last year, I believe that their third phase would have been probably already started. And the grocery store that you hear so much talked about tonight probably would have been maybe just about completed, or certainly well on its way. So it's confusing to me as a longtime educator and talking to my students about planning, why you would approve two different projects with the same in the exact same area when the city needs those kinds of projects, but spread out. So I want you to give it some thought in that sense of what it says to our students and the families and communities that have invested in Capital Roots, have invested in Troy, that this longtime organization that has put so much back into our city is now being slighted a little bit by your actions. And so please think about that. And then I would hope that you actually table that aspect of the developer's project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Nancy Klepsch. I live at 166 First Street, but before that, I lived at 3254 Sixth Avenue in Troy. I lived in North Central for 14 years, and I was actually the neighborhood association president at one point. I can tell you firsthand that North Central needs a lot of things and a lot of our support, and definitely food and a grocery would be one of them. I would say that right now, someone who lives in the neighborhood could speak to that better than me. So what I'd like to share with you is something that's really important for me to say. On the darkest, bleakest, most frightening days of this pandemic, Capital Roots was there for me and my wife when we couldn't go out shopping and feel safe in places. When my students and their families in Averill Park Central School District couldn't get fresh vegetables and fruit, Capital Roots responded. I've been a gardener for a long time. I have nothing against this supermarket. In fact, I'm still learning about it and its impact on the neighborhood and listening to how neighbors feel about it. But what I can tell you is, I don't know how the planning board shows a little TLC, a little love, but I think that Capital Roots needs some better consideration from this wise panel in this matter. It seems to be causing some consternation when a not-for-profit makes investments like they're doing. These are long-term planning things that come from hard and soft money. This just didn't arise overnight. So we all know that they've been planning this different expansion of their markets and such. I'd advocate strongly that you think of a way, and I know it's a real hard thing to ask, but think of a way to support them in their work. I'm gonna parking lot. I'm real neutral. I don't want to say I'm not for this supermarket because I've read things and I understand how the community feels. But I'm just respectfully asking you all to consider Capital Roots just a little bit more in this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michelle Badger, and I have lived in the city of Troy 30 years.
Could you try to speak a little more directly into the mic? Thank you.
My name is Michelle Badger, and I've been a resident of Troy for 30 years. And one of the reasons why I came to Troy is that I thought people here were trying to do the right thing and trying to move forward to make the city better. And also because of such organizations like Capital Roots, which I've also supported. And I support the comments made by the individuals before me that this board consider their support of Capital Roots and to put a grocery store so close when Troy needs grocery stores all over the place. And even if the store was a half mile further out, given walking distances, it would seem to alleviate some of the needs in that area, in the sense of spreading out accessibility to grocery stores in a walkable fashion. And if Troy is still considering to be, excuse me, a walkable city, you would want to sort of space facilities like this throughout areas that are food deserts. And much of Troy does not have access to grocery stores unless you drive. And that's even in areas like where I live in Sherrill Court, which is off of Brunswick Road. I have to drive to go grocery shopping because I'm limited to the Stewarts, that's walking distance. So I really wish you would consider all of our thoughts and considerations when you're making this decision, that when you've already supported Capital Roots, that maybe citing a grocery store a little further out might be a better idea to provide greater accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Menn. I live at 122 First Street. And I've talked to many of the residents that live in downtown Troy. And the one thing they want, full stop, is a grocery store. Any grocery store, all grocery stores, more grocery stores. Capital Roots does fantastic work. And if they develop a grocery store, that is fantastic. We can have more than one grocery store. In fact, today I was out in Latham where two grocery stores are right next to each other, just like it is in every single suburban community throughout the Capital District and the country. This is one of the most high density neighborhoods in the city of Troy. Let's not keep taking our tax dollars across the river to Latham Farms and giving them our money. Let's instead invest in more than one fantastic nonprofit grocery store. How many communities get to say our urban grocery stores are nonprofits that are dedicated to giving back to the community? Do not look at things as a zero-sum game. There is enough here in Troy to support great work of multiple organizations. We deserve more, not less. More. And so I would say before we start fighting for crumbs, let's take all we can. And right now we're offered two tremendously powerful, wonderful organizations. And you know what? We're going to shop at both. And there's going to be certain products that Capital Roots has that nobody else in the Capital District has. And there's going to be some that another grocery store has, this other nonprofit grocery store has, no one else has. Let's give our residents options. And you know what? Those organizations are going to thrive, and they're going to go to South Troy, a true food desert, truly struggling. And so when the next organization, when Capital Roots brings a proposal for South Troy, when another organization brings a proposal for South Troy, that true food desert that has two corner stores, that's it, and a Stewart's. Kudos to Stewart's. Keep that in mind. We deserve more than crumbs. Give us everything. Give it all. Give us all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. I'm Amy Klein. I'm CEO of Capital Roots, and I want to turn to some of the elements of the project that I think the planning board should be looking at. I've already spoken about why I think this project will be detrimental to our organization. It's great to think that two projects can succeed side by side. This isn't for-profit supermarkets, and the reality is they will not both succeed. And a planning board should take that into consideration. But when you look at the plans, I would ask the planning board how tractor trailers are going to be moving product from Vanderheiden to the loading dock, and how those tractor trailers are going to move in that small urban space in an already crowded neighborhood. There's been a lot of effort moving truck traffic off of these small streets. We're diverting traffic off of J Street, right? Why are we going to be putting that truck traffic back on Vanderheiden, which is such a small street and already a very tight residential street? From what I saw of the plans, the plan is to put a loading dock for truck parking that would actually be in the alleyway. That alleyway abuts one of our community gardens and is an incredibly tight space. That is not good for movement in the community. And that is a neighborhood. Is that good for that neighborhood to have these tractor trailers moving about? I urge the planning board to look at that. A few weeks ago at the zoning board meeting, the zoning board gave approval to reduce parking. And that was based on the concept that there's plenty of parking that First Columbia provides to that area. Well, anybody who lives in that area or works in that area knows that the parking lot that First Columbia owns and operates by 787 is almost completely vacant. And to think that that parking lot will be used in any different way in conjunction with this new development is foolish. Despite a shuttle that runs every day, multiple times a day, to the Headley building and the Flanagan building, people do not use that parking lot. What makes anyone think that it's suddenly going to be used for parking? If you drive up and down River Street in that portion of the area, parking is incredibly tight as it is. Street parking is not to be found. The small business, Crispin's, that occupies, has their business right on River Street, I don't know how they're going to operate because they barely have any place to park their cars for repairs. I really think the planning board needs to look at these issues and needs to determine whether this project, the way it is laid out, makes sense and is good for the neighborhood and is planned appropriately. Because it doesn't seem to me like it has been given a good look through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bryant, Luigi, 281 Grange Road. I approve this project.
Do me a favor and please speak into the mic. Sorry.
Bryant, Luigi, 281 Grange Road. I approve this project fully. The woman in the back actually kind of hit all my points. It's no different than being in Latham and having Trader Joe's and, Whole Foods right next to each other. I believe, Capital Roots is a great thing, and I want them to continue to be part of the community and to help us grow all together as a team, because I think everybody's after the same thing and developing our whole city, and making the whole city a better place and to have more people, more diversity and more, competitive, healthy, competitive businesses inside the city. So I think it's a good thing to have two grocery stores. That's a lot of what I heard here is, the thing is we're going to have two grocery stores that are so close to each other. But I think it's an actual good thing. Like she said, there's going to be one thing at one store you can get, but somebody may need to go across the street. And I think it's good, healthy competition to have those type of businesses next to each other. I think they help each other grow together, and it helps the city, helps the community. I think it's a good project for the city. I don't see any downside on it. I see upside. I'm sure the issues with the parking can be addressed, in one way or another. And, I truly believe that there should be some type of solution, where everybody get together and be on the same page to push this project through and, see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matthew Schuler. I spoke last month. And I just again would encourage the board to look at the things the city has put forward in its own plans about taking care of runoff, about complete streets, and the things that you can do to encourage all of those things to be taken into account whenever any kind of development happens to help the city move towards its goals.
Thank you.
My name is John Kane. I live at 161 Washington. I would like to say that I certainly think that it should be taken into consideration the concerns of, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, but the lady from Capitol Roots who was talking about traffic flow, and that certainly does seem within the planning board's purview. Outside the planning board's purview is, how many grocery stores are next to each other. If there were two retail shops across from each other, it wouldn't be up to the planning board to decide. I do think, I live by Washington Park. There are no grocery stores near me. I don't have a car. I would love to see more grocery stores down there. This development is not by me. This development is in the location it's at. And if the developer wishes to partner with another nonprofit grocery store and have them be a tenant, I think that is a totally reasonable, totally reasonable accommodation that the planning board should be required to make. Thank you.
My name is Mark Bryant. I live in Del Mar, New York. I'm the treasurer of Capital Roots currently. Capital Roots for over 40 years has provided an amazing service to the city of Troy and outlying areas. We're involved in a pre-approved project right now that is very financially difficult to pull off. Any not-for-profit these days, hiring people, keeping them employed, dealing with turnover, dealing with just trying to keep them going is critical, to support the community. As you get into, this particular project that we're trying to put on as an addition on our building, the competitive grocery store across the street essentially eats into market share. And these are two not-for-profit organizations. So it's like, who's going to win the battle really is the bottom line. And, the history of our organization is compelling. We know that. People here know that. It's so simple to think that their operation could be easily moved to another food desert in Troy. And we've been providing that food desert facility now in a very effective manner for a number of years. If we do our project, if we put the effort into our project to expand our grocery operations, it could be detrimental. So I think the board needs to understand, the legacy of this organization, the financial impact that this might have by virtue of another organization, which could clearly move at some other place in our local area, particularly in other food deserts in the city of Troy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dash, did any members of the public indicate they wanted to make public comment by Zoom?
No members of the public from Zoom have mentioned the need to speak. If they would like to, now is a good time to speak up. We have also received written comments on this project over the last few days, which will be compiled and kept with the minutes of this meeting.
So if you're on Zoom, please just use the raise hand function or otherwise indicate that you do want to speak. Otherwise, we won't know.
And we do have one member of the public asking to speak. Hello, you're welcome to speak and share your comments. Just state your name and your address, please, for the record.
Yeah, hi. First, I just want to make sure you can hear me. This is Tara Quackenbush. I live at 1 Levi Avenue. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I actually just wanted to second what I believe Matt was saying earlier regarding taking into consideration the complete streets checklist that I know needs to be submitted with any application as far as development goes. And I noticed on that checklist, there were 2 big blank spaces where the form asks the applicant to describe suggested improvements and which suggestions will be incorporated. And there's an example provided right on the form of things that should or could be incorporated into the project. However, there were those 2 blank spaces with nothing there suggested that they were going to actually take that into consideration. And then when asked, does this project include green infrastructure? The answer was simply no. I think at this time where we are is as humans in this ecosystem, that is not acceptable. We really need to consider any negative externalities associated with this project before it moves forward. Otherwise, it really seems like the developer is receiving the bargain at the cost of the surrounding ecosystem. And I'll just leave it brief and at that right now. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, if no other members of the public want to comment, then we'll turn to commissioner comments and questions.
No, is it on now?
Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to start with one comment, and that is a planning comment. And that is something you find out once you're on the planning commission. And that is that when we're not an economic development group, we are a planning commission. We are reactive. We don't get to say, oh, why don't you build that someplace else? All we get to do is review it as in terms of impacts, whether they're negative impacts, and that would be actual impacts, not economic development thoughts or that sort of thing. And then, of course, site plan. So there were a number of very helpful suggestions, or would be helpful if we were a body that had that kind of power, but we do not. The example that's always given in planning school is Wolf Road, where you'll have 3 gas stations already at an intersection, and then a 4th one comes in, and you cannot turn that 4th one down unless there's some reason, a negative impact. And saying, oh, well, there's 4, it does not work. So we have here an application for a grocery store. We have also a pre-approved program that's going to be, I hope, built. We have 2 nonprofits. One we know, and most of us have supported as long as it's been there. Certainly, I go all the way back to Dean Leaf. So there's no question of loyalty or, oh, this is going to harm. That we can't really make that judgment in the way that some people are saying, we'll just put it in South Troy. The other thing is, I'm not sure it's apples to apples, the 2 kinds of stores. I live close enough. I do drive to it, but I go to Capitol Roots often. But then I go to the market because it's limited. And I think it will still be very much geared towards fresh vegetables, fresh fruits and all. I don't think it will be as full service. And I do think we need both. So those are my comments.
Okay. My comment would also be to the nature of both stores. I don't remember in Capitol Roots expansion program if you were going to have a full service grocery store or not, or just expand on the produce, the meat, and the things that you already carry. That is a question that would really help me determine what I think about the rest of it.
Sure, you can address the question from the commission.
I think the question has been raised about these 2 models of stores. And my first question would be to ask if anybody has seen or gone to Bargain Grocery in Utica. And so I would just like to inform folks that Bargain Grocery is not
a grocery. It's not a typical grocery. It is not a, a fresh market. It's not a Price Chopper. It's not even a Save-A-Lot. It is off-brand, expired food, rotten food. And I would say that this community deserves much better than that. And so I would beware the interloper that you do not know. You're not knowing what you're getting. And so, it's fine if people feel like that is what our community deserves. A low budget, off-brand, expired food, rotten food, but that's not what Capital Roots offers. And to answer your question, we are expanding our market basket. We have done that through the pandemic to offer the opportunity for people to access bread and dairy products. And we're continuing to expand that market basket. We will never sell toilet paper. That doesn't make sense for us. That's not our model. We're a food organization. But we will never sell low quality food. And we don't make money on our food. That's not our model either. So I just wanted to make people aware. And I've avoided saying anything about this other entity because that would not be appropriate, but I feel like at this point it would be.
So I'd like to expand on Barb's comment. I think it's important really to hammer in our function as a planning commission. And I think a pivotal part of that is realizing the judgment and evaluation process we have to go through is set against certain metrics. We can only evaluate and approve based on certain metrics and through certain mechanisms, meaning competition is as far as I'm aware, and I'll qualify all my comments with, I have limited experience so far on the board, but competition is not one of them. As it was mentioned earlier, we can't evaluate based on that. My understanding is we're here to guide projects, look at site plans and make suggestions on how they can be improved, but not change functions of what a developer is interested in doing with a space. It's not, if it is a permitted use, then it is something I think we as a board have to move forward with an evaluation based upon, rather than saying we don't like having another grocery store next to another grocery store that already exists. So I guess to just kind of finish that point, that the board makes has to be legally defensible. So it would have to stand up in a court of law if any developer said, look, we don't agree with your decision. So there has to be an actual path and something we can point to that says, this is why that doesn't work. And if it was the case where, for instance, parking could never be made to work, or deliveries would never work, something like that is a sort of evaluation point for us. That's all I can end. I guess one other thing. I don't think Capital Roots will find one adversary amongst any of us. We're definitely all supporters.
So I think building on your comments, Roddy, similarly, one of us disliked the operator of a certain proposed business use that would, as you said, wouldn't. If one of us disliked a certain proposed business operator, that wouldn't give us a basis to reject an application, as you were saying, because we are looking at each application that comes before us for whether it complies with Troy's code, with the comprehensive plan, with all these factors, not per se with what we like about how you've operated a business in another city.
There was a comment about the impact to the stormwater system. Aaron and the engineering group review the details for a project and make sure that they're compliant with code, with how stormwater runoff is being handled. That's something that goes through a different approval stream, so to speak. It is definitely something we look at and say, hey, has it been considered? But there's lots of different ways that goes through us. I will say, I think that the project in general is going to bring some diverse functions to the city. I mean, having a rock gym is something I think is an exciting proposal for the city. Yeah.
And not necessarily in opposition to senior housing, I would add. I find that juxtaposition to be at worst comical, but really I think it's fun. Why not? Why not pose two apparently different cohorts of people close to one another, and maybe they can engage in a way that they haven't before.
It's a great comment. I mean, you're putting two different demographics right next to each other. Mixing them together can always bring positive effects. I don't think, again, this goes back to evaluating on certain criteria. There was a comment about putting a rock gym across from an elderly facility. There is no impetus on the developer to put a occupational or physical therapy place next to it just because it falls within the same sort of audience or I'm not sure how to word it, but it's what the developer would be interested in putting in that place.
I'd like to shift my comments to some planning and architectural issues. I read site plans for a living. That's not all I do, but I'm really struggling to understand what's happening in the site plans. And I think that maybe, yes, we rely on the planning staff to analyze much of the technical components of the site drawings, particularly the civil engineering drawings. But it's really helpful to have a site plan, particularly for a project that's this big on different sides of the street, with more of a layman's approach. I find it challenging to wade my way through these drawings, which isn't to say that they're inaccurate. They're just not very user friendly. So in the time that we've had to review them, it's been really hard to wrap my head around them. I'm always interested in materiality. Where's the asphalt? Where's the concrete? Where are the other hard impervious surfaces? Where are the pervious surfaces? What's planting bed? What's grass? Where are the trees? And some of that's here, but it's not easy. It's not easy to read. So that's just a general comment. And so I would appreciate a drawing that helps me understand the full development in a user-friendly way. I don't understand what is happening when I look at the second to last rendering, or we could look at the third to last rendering. Hey Dash, do you mind pulling up page 86? There's new construction on the back or west side of that building called Flanagan. Okay. So will you describe what is happening back there? It looks like there's garage doors, but maybe it's just storefront. I can't really.
Yeah,
tell.
there's a little bit of infill in that elevation there, Sarah. So the garage bays that are on the left side, I guess north, if you're looking at the site plan with the arrows, that's an infill between the existing garages that are there and the start of the rock gym structure to the south. So it's meant to bridge the two uses because my tenant that wants to do the rock gym wants to have some programming in the existing garages, do bouldering, but also connect that to the high bay space that we're going to build new construction to the south. So it's kind of like a lobby for their business, and that would be considered their main entrance to get in, coming off of the river side of the structure. So that's why it's there.
Okay, so the first volume on the north
Dash, do you have a laser pointer?
end. Sorry, Dash, can you read my mind and move a cursor?
You might have it closer up to you, right?
Yeah, no, you need to go back. So let me understand. Sorry, guys. This piece is existing?
Yes. Those are garages right now that we're going to convert to bouldering space.
Okay, got it. And so describe the material. So let's go to the rock gym rendering. Obviously,
down, yes.
the gray mass behind the addition is actually
That's the
Correct.
historic planning and building. Yes.
okay. So it'd be helpful to see that in context, like it's one building. Let's show it like one building.
Well, they are separate and there's reason for that. So if I sandwich them together, I have a fire rating conflict. If I give it the 5 feet distance that's there now, it gets me out of heavily rating the north wall of the rock gym. And it also still lets minimal light into the windows that are on the south facade of 547, which are still occupied tenant floors. It also allowed for potential egress to come out of that gap, essentially from either the basement level or the first floor, come out to River Street, up a set of stairs, and we may not have them on this set of plans, but it would allow you to evacuate and get out to River Street instead of back through to the river side of the property if there was ever a fire event. As to the materials, can you go to the elevations, Dash?
The west elevation shows a gap of like a foot between the existing building and the new building.
Because that's got the stair tower there, which is existing. It's wider on the east elevation as you look at it from River Street. Yeah, that is,
No, go up one sheet.
that's the west.
Which view are you looking for?
That's the east or that's the west that Sarah is talking about. Could you zoom in at the gap between 547 and the south addition.
Right, so you're telling me it's not an addition, it's a new.
It's an addition because I have to go through the whole SHPO NPS process. It's connected at the ground level at the riverside. So Parks is going to tell me it's an addition. You have to
Okay.
follow our rules. It's also on the same parcel.
But
So
it's got a tiny little connection point.
Yes.
Another one, okay.
yes.
So the addition, well, yeah, the addition on the south side of the building, you're saying will block view for some occupied floors?
Not entirely, but partially.
I don't know the floor plan within the existing building. Do those units go front to back of the building? Or are some of them limited?
3 of the 5 floors are completely the same tenant. So those are straight through office. The 5th floor, we're envisioning the same thing for the use we're envisioning up there as a flex office across the entire floor plate. And then the first floor would actually be the same thing. We're trying to single tenant that and possibly send that tenant also down to the other end of the basement that's not occupied by the rock gym. So there'd be complete floors of tenancy. They're not being whacked up into directional multi-tenant units on those floors.
So the space in between historic building and new building is not consistent? Is it a pie shape?
No, it should be
I
5
know
feet
we don't have
consistently.
plans, so it's, I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
This is kind of frustrating. I think we can only get just so far tonight. And
agreed.
it's helpful to have you tying down some of these things, but at some point, I think it just has to be tabled because it's too complex.
I think that's fair, Barb.
And
Yep.
No, but if you have other points, it's good to get them out.
One other architectural comment, and I don't want
You
to.
can zoom in here and probably see it.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of arches in the existing masonry structure. which is obviously in stark contrast with the rectangularity of the new proposal. I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of blend a little bit more curvature into the new building.
It's tough with that type of construction, right? Because you're going brand new versus, I believe, late 1800s for the Miller Hardware building that's now Flanagan. So there's difficulty there. It's also a difficult tenant to do a lot of ornate administrations on the outside of their structure, or I have to charge them more rent, and it's a tight business that I'm trying to keep the cost down, which is kind of why it looks semi-bland. The comments I got verbally from SHPO in their initial walk around with me was try and continue some of the banding that's on the front facade of Flanagan and continue it across the new structure and wrap it around so it has some relation to the old structure. And just use muted colors as they advised me on the prior application we talked about tonight for 494, where it's not showy and they don't detract from the historic nature of the adjoining building. That's part of the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for preservation when you do ground up additions next to historic structures.
Yeah, perhaps like a thematic echo of the banding or over the north side windows where you have these white arches. Maybe there's a way to frame some of the openings to kind of mirror some of the banding.
There's not a lot of space in that structure for windows because most of the proposed interior design is a wraparound, almost a giant sea of rock wall that goes around the entire exterior perimeter. So if I do too many,
I don't mean to suggest new
Punch
windows
holes. No,
or
I-
additional windows. I mean, just detail work.
just
out
in like a
around the
fenestration
window.
at the top cornice to try and mimic what we have or do something along those lines.
So I just have a general gripe about things like this. And this rendering, what I hate about CAD drawings is it's just plopped there. You can't even tell it's Troy. I did not know that was the Flanagan building.
It's hard to model
And-
that quickly and
There's no background that shows the real background. It would be a lot easier to figure out what's going on if you could, Photoshop some context in there.
you won't actually see too much from that angle because the Flanagan building takes up a lot of that background. But if you'd like me to juxtapose the real Flanagan building in a photo behind it, if that helps your evaluation.
I think it's really,
Okay. We'll do that.
and what's also tough is, I mean, architects are faced with this all the time, is marrying something new with something historic. IMP did a good job. You could, well, so,
Debatable, Sarah.
oh no, it's good. I know, opinion. So
He's not so bad.
I think, I don't have a huge, I like the material, I feel like this is good. What's really tough is, but having a relationship with the building that it's marrying, some kind of relationship, doesn't have to be the material. But this is a really important building. I mean, this is at the gate to the
Yes.
city.
Well,
So
and that gets to
anything-
why it's going there, right? Is you're trying to create this nice entrance to the city. We did the hotel on the south side of it a few years ago. That looks nice, presenting itself as you drive across the Route 7 bridge. This will have a similar effect. You'll see it on the approach coming from the other side of Watervliet, from Latham across to where Watervliet and Cohoes come together. And then it'll kind of be a beacon for Troy as you come into the Collar City. So that was the goal of putting it there. Is it's got great presence. This user that's coming to the market to operate it is going to have a better chance of success being there than if we try and shoehorn them somewhere else that's hard to get to. And that's the key of our whole business, right? Is it's access to the uses that people want to go get to. Putting it here made the most sense from what we looked at within our holdings to try and fit them into our master plan. But I agree, it needs some connection to the historic building. We can work on that. We can work on the presentation, Suzanne, and get it to be So it's easier to understand, here's where it is in relation to the other properties and
So just a couple other things. If the X break, what looks like X bracing isn't doing something, then it needs to be real or not there. That is my opinion.
Is it
I
a
think
structural thing?
seeing, right. If it's bracing, awesome. I think seeing into the gym is critical. That's what you're suggesting. And then otherwise it's a lot of corrugated metal. So if you can really make a commitment to liven up the ground plane on the back of the building, I think that's going to do as much facade.
we did a little of that at the kind of intermediary connector with those wood kickers that come out of the ground and try and present at the entrance. I mean, you want more of that, or do you want just more attention to the cladding as it goes around the entire facade?
Everything. We want it all. Really, I mean, just to like give more attention to the facade and really push that entry plane as much as you can.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be building. It can be, you know, put a wall outside, put a little climbing wall outside. I don't
We
know.
thought about that. It's tough in the winter months to
That's okay. Don't
keep
use
it
it in the
going.
winter, you know, because this is like really, this is welcoming people into the city.
Right.
It could be really fun. Right now, we just look at this building and it's a thrill. Maybe not anymore, but like for a while, it was a thrill to see, okay, what color is it going to be tonight? It's so fun. And
All
then
right.
this is the next thing.
We'll do our best to thrill you.
Okay, so the next item is the housing, and I think it is, before I say things, I know we've been on this project a long time, everyone, but this is a big project and it's worthy of the attention, I think. Will you just describe what the materials are on the facade of the apartment building?
You go to that
The
render dash.
7-story.
Last page there.
Or you can go to the elevation too.
You wanted the rendering?
Yeah, the rendering on the last page. There we go.
So it's a podium base, so masonry, concrete at ground level. And then we're thinking of a combo of panel and drive it for the floors above that, going up from 2 to the top. We did some accents with the window stacking on each of the bays, try and break it up, do something different on different sections of the facades as you look at it. So it's not just one big monolithic color that's the same. And I don't think we did one for the rear side, but kind of continues that same changing as you go around the entire facade of it, wrapped around towards the river. We figured do the L facing the water so you get better river views of more units as they stick out on the north end of the building going west. And then as you see, that's just concept landscaping around the bottom to green it up, but obviously we can put some more greenery there if that's desired.
I have a question. I love the Flanagan building. I think it's one of the best buildings in Troy, and you've got all that wonderful arching and the whole Romanesque Bible thing going. Why, what inspired you to first choose these colors, which don't complement the Flanagan building at all? And I would have liked to have seen a little more contextual. I mean, you don't have to make another Flanagan building. That's impossible.
Well, and that's kind of why it's this way. As you look up and down River Street from Flanagan going north, it's a lot of heavy brick masonry. It's all the same. We're trying to change it up slightly, but if it's very off, we can work on adjusting that. You want it to blend more with the adjoining taller former warehouses?
I'd like to see just more of the Flanagan building pulled into it. And to me, the most important feature that it's missing is curvature. There's no arches. It's just rectangular. that's, if we're not gonna repeat materials, then geometry is what you're left with. So for me, that's what's missing when I look at it.
So is the ground floor of this building just planned to be rental offices or administration?
For now.
There's no commercial rental space? of
There's
any kind?
potential to put that in, and it makes sense being a senior facility.
I think that would be a great feature considering
Yeah.
that it could help develop that section of River Street.
But it's all the uses, right? The reason to do the grocery with this rock gym and the Flanagan office is it's mixed use. They all support each other. And it's a destination for the rest of the folks in Troy to come to. There's not as much in North Central besides Capitol Roots to come to right now. And we feel what we're doing here is going to help be a magnet for our whole district to get more people to Capitol Roots' front door and go shop there. So it's not that we try to come and box them out. We're trying to make this a destination that people want to come to, not just from Troy, but from all over the Capital District because of where it is off of the loop of highways that we're next to across the river. That was our whole mindset in coming to Troy in the first place, is you had this great access right on River Street. You can come right off of Route 7 and it's great. It's like suburban offices in a great city. But instead of having all the surface parking lots along the river, let's build stuff on them and make it better and higher use.
Can you speak within the senior center towards a design thought given to communal activity for the seniors? How the design encourages community in the senior center?
I think it's a mix of the design of the rooms themselves. We're trying to follow market trends and do stuff that's not super space wasty, where it's give someone a huge unit that they just fill all their stuff up with and then just kind of sit there the whole time. It's more to, it's an active adult geared senior facility. So it's put on the river so that when the riverfront trail extends through, you have that as your main amenity to go up and down. And that speaks to our fitness element, is you have that as your back door basically to go up and down the Hudson unobtruded by railroad tracks and highways. We think that's awesome. So I think that's a big piece of it, is citing it where it is. And it's also geared towards a lot of seniors that have moved out of Troy that want to come back. They're downsizing after the kids go off and go to college and then grow up by their own places. They want to come home to Troy, but there's no product in Troy that really caters to them specifically in the new construction product that we've seen come online in years. So this is the first space that we can think of that really caters to that user and tries to welcome them in, welcome them back to the city, basically, to say, hey, this is a place specifically for you guys. And we wouldn't discourage them from climbing into rock gym. There's shorter bouldering walls that are not as high and precarious to go do that activity. But with the rock gym, there's also other fitness accessory uses that are part of it. There's a spinning room, there's a yoga room. So it's not all about just climbing. It has some other fitness programs as well.
Are there any like rec halls or larger event spaces within?
Well, there's some common space. We contemplated at one point trying to do a rooftop space that kind of looks down the
That would be
river.
amazing. That would be a really, really great addition.
Or a pool.
Yep. I think it's one aspect of this we haven't talked about a lot as a planning commission, that it is an elderly living facility. And there are probably some suggestions we can make for additions or things that would provide a more unique or strong type of business like that, or, housing for them.
So once we are north of Route 7, everything on this street is brick. And I'm just gonna say, I think this building needs to be,
All brick or
I
at
think
least
it
partially?
needs to be predominantly brick.
Steel frame brick facade.
Yep. I mean, that's my gut. Does it have to be? No. I saw this image and I thought, oh my gosh, it's travertine. But like, I think it needs, if it's not brick, it needs to be really rich and so special that you don't care that it's not brick.
All right.
It's a big building.
No, it is.
And I think that if your facade is going to be so regular, and you know, and monolithic, that at first the balconies, like it wasn't doing it for me, but actually if it is going to be punctuated this way with this rhythm, I do think that the solids have to be really solid. It doesn't have to be red brick. It doesn't have to be red brick. It doesn't have to have artists. I think that's something to explore. Yeah, but I don't think that, you know, an applied stucco finish it's not going to blend into the existing character of the neighborhood at all. You know, with the hotel, that was a brand. We understood that. We didn't have to like it, but we recognized it. And this is something different. I think it should be brick. It should be masonry.
Here's an idea for incorporating some of the arches. If you look on page 88 dash. Oh, you're right. See that upper portion of
The 5th floor section. Right.
Mirroring or bringing some of those elements into the base of this. I can see time marrying.
Or
on a
just
little
the
bit.
top level.
Or the top.
That could be really cool.
And a cornice. I like cornices.
Well, just in general, I find the drawing very difficult to, I can't even figure it out. So
The site
Yeah.
drawings.
that, it just doesn't do it.
Okay.
I can't figure out what's the white stuff, what's this and that. So, but I don't want to spend a lot more time talking about it tonight. If there's some way we can get more comments.
Just
to it,
different
because it
hatching
just
might
doesn't
help you.
work.
Sounds like the commission might be done discussing this this evening.
Yeah, I
So if I could just chime in really quickly, if you could leave the applicant clear instructions on where he should go next, because I think tonight there's been discussion of revising a number of the drawings that were provided. There was some comment that some of it was hard to understand. So whatever you guys need in terms of new revised documentation or documentation that was not provided, but you need for your review. You don't have to think of it all this evening right now on the fly, but if we could communicate that to the applicant before, you know, a week, then they would be able to work on that stuff for the next meeting.
May I propose that we actually take up no additional time and we can table it and assure you that within X number of days, we'll have a clear and well-defined list of things to pursue further.
Fine.
All right, then in the interest of time, we'll adjourn. I'm not going to close the public hearing. We're expecting revised submissions that people will have an opportunity to comment on at future hearings. Did you have a preference for when we adjourn to? If it's, do you want to be on the November agenda?
Yes, that, if we could.
All right. So then
17th, I believe, Dash.
Yeah, I'm moving adjourn this proposal to the November 17th agenda.
I'll second that.
Moving to a vote, Barbara Higbee.
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin.
Yes.
Sarah Wengert. Roddy Yagan. Yes. And I vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. This application is adjourned to November 17th. Thank you. Moving on to our next item. This is PLPC 2020-50, 561 to 565 Congress Street. Do we have the applicant?
This applicant recently reached out to us asking to be tabled to the November 17th meeting. However, that project was tabled because both the ZBA and ourselves requested proof of ownership of the land being discussed. So city staff advised that it's actually tabled indefinitely until that documentation is provided.
Understood. Okay, so that application is tabled. Do we have to vote on that or
I believe so, just to vote on it.
just to
being
vote on it
tabled
being?
indefinitely.
tabled? All right, so I move that we table it indefinitely. Barbara Higbee.
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin. Sarah Winger.
Yes.
Roddy Yagan.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries. The application is tabled indefinitely. Next item, PLPC 2021-32. This is 95 Hill Street. Do we have the applicant present?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bill Hennessy. We submitted a revised site plan for this project to revisit this. The property is approximately 8,000 square feet, 0.2 acres, very small triangular property. Currently has a Citgo gasoline station there. The owner wants to remove the gasoline service from the property. In doing that, they will remove the canopy, the dispensers, and the underground storage tanks. And originally wanted to just, repave what they removed. The board requested we consider other alignments and a layout of the proposed property. So we've resubmitted this plan. This includes 8 parking spaces, which is what is required by the code. I put existing green space on there in the light green, which is the top of the triangular parcel where the planter is now. We are proposing to add a tree as requested by the board, little leaf linden, because I believe that is the tree I saw on the tree program that the city has on the website. The green space does exist at the southern part of the site, where there are currently 2 sheds. We do have green space there. But we are proposing to add green space at the front, at the north, next to the planter to help delineate the parking. We would propose grass at this point. We would propose, obviously, the tree at the top. And we added some planters around the parking at the front of the building. By putting in the 25-foot wide, we actually widened it to 26 feet wide at suggestion of Mr. Vera. The alignment, the queuing of cars is not perfect. But as you can see, I try to depict the car there entering and leaving the site, which is acceptable. It's not perfect, but given the small size of the site, we believe it's been a mom and pop gas station for many, many years. I didn't go into the research to find out how far back it went, but we do know it went back at least 50 years. I proposed putting the handicap spot towards the front instead. It previously was down where the propane service is. Also, there is a 6-yard trash container currently on the property on the southern part of the property. It's currently actually stored on the sidewalk on the hills on the 5th Ave side, which I don't think is appropriate. We do have adequate parking spaces and pavement area to fit that below the building, south of the building. And that still gives us 8 spots. That is what we need. So I added wheel stops because I still wanted to protect the front of the building a little. I'm not a fan of bollards. A lot of the stores are doing bollards now. I'm not a fan of having the car right up against the front either. So the wheel stop fits fine. So that is our plan of attack. We have the planters again around the parking next to the building to help delineate the travel path. The other big question, of course, is sidewalk. We are proposing a sidewalk on Hill Street and the curb on Hill Street. We're not proposing sidewalk on 5th Avenue. This project was intended to be an environmental project. We were removing, the environmental hazard at the property. So we're removing a revenue source. So we don't really have a significant revenue source to pay for these improvements. So the sidewalk on 5th Avenue, it didn't seem to be as inviting as sidewalk on Hill Street. Mr. Vera suggested, I believe, last month also. There is a 4-foot snow storage, and then there's the sidewalk. We are proposing to do the the granite curb. I believe that's what the city requires. We are requesting consideration, however, for us to re-establish it as a paved sidewalk and snow storage, which is what it is now. It will be delineated by the curb. Because of the cost of that, because we don't really have a revenue source to cover this part of the improvement. That's just a request, because it's asphalt now. The Adams Street piece of the city's sidewalk is asphalt. It's not concrete. So we would be marrying up to that. So we think it's cleaner to marry up asphalt to it. But that's for the board to consider. We do request that. The owners asked me to request it.
Thank you. Do any members of the public want to comment on this application?
Good evening, Danny Sanders. As noted last month, the owners of the apartments across the street on Adams, and this is a huge improvement from the last presentation, and we're really excited to see these improvements that he's proposing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wanted to comment? Okay, commissioner comments? Or
I just want to say thank you. You really listened to us
Yeah.
and we appreciate it. My only question is to that part of the room. Do we take exception to asphaltic sidewalk?
No, we won't accept asphalt sidewalk. But I think that perhaps we could limit the extent of sidewalk that's being done. I think the intent of the curbing was to better delineate the access off of Hill Street that may be achieved simply by the landscaping. And so the sidewalks are not in disrepair. They are asphalt, but they're not necessarily, certainly the sidewalks adjacent to the area of work on this site are not in disrepair. But I would suggest that if there's any disturbance of those areas or of that sidewalk as a result of the removal of the tanks, that it be restored with concrete. And those areas of sidewalk be fully restored. So the extent of sidewalk shown here is likely not necessary because the tanks are focused towards the northern end of the site. So the sidewalk that's shown on the southern end would not necessarily need to be touched because the area wouldn't be disturbed. So I would say only the areas of the right of way that are being disturbed as a result or damaged as a result of the removal of the tank, I'd like to see those areas, the curbing and the sidewalk restored. But if they aren't damaged, I think that the landscaping that's being shown here provides the channelization we were looking for. And, perhaps the curbing and sidewalk could be part of a larger project, either CDBG in the area or, later if the sidewalks are in disrepair, then the owner would
And
be responsible.
what about at the east edge on Hill Street?
Yeah.
Above where the car is shown?
So that's an area that I think could potentially be impacted by the removal of the tanks.
Even when you're in saw cutting for putting in the curb all the way down that length, are you considering that as part of the disturbance? 'Cause then anywhere you're putting curb, you're going to be cutting into.
Well,
or-
the curb installation would only disturb 2 feet on either side, and there is a utility strip there, so it wouldn't necessarily disturb the asphalt.
Yeah, I guess I don't know where the asphalt sits relative to the curb down here. Is that the-
Yes, that's all existing asphalt right now. Yes, yes.
And I will note that the traffic circulation, I don't know how many people here are from South Troy, but the traffic circulation for this is similar to the Stewart's on 4th. It's almost identical, actually, to the way the Stewart's on 4th functions, except it's rotated the other way.
Yeah. One other comment would be maybe, and this shouldn't be held as like a requirement or anything, but I think it would be good for there to be a trash can on the north edge of the property. Just because when I've driven in that area, I see a lot of trash right around that island. So just having something there would help rather than hurt.
Okay, so there is not a utility strip there currently. There's the potential for green space there. So if the curb is going to be installed there, the asphalt could be removed 3 feet, 4 feet back from the back of curb, and that area restored with lawn or green space of some sort. Follow?
And that's the snow storage. Yeah, that's yeah.
This curbing is going to be cut in. Looks like we're proposing curb here, right? Currently, right now, this curb is not well defined. There's asphalt all the way back.
Yep.
So what they could do is when they cut of this curb and they cut here, leaving the asphalt sidewalk that's in place, remove the asphalt here, set the new curb, and restore this area with landscaping of some sort. Again, better defining visually as you're driving down the road where the entry point is. But again, if sidewalk's going to be replaced, it would have to be concrete.
Understood. So a condition of approval could be that that the full scope of sidewalk, the full scope of new sidewalk on this drawing is not required, but that any sidewalk that is disturbed as part of this scope of work shall be replaced with concrete sidewalk.
You can even make it simpler, which is the right of way should be restored per the city engineer's recommendations. If you want to give me that power.
I don't know, that's a lot
As
of
long as
power.
I don't have to repeat it.
I mean, it's right. This would be normally fall under an excavation permit if it was just the work that's being done in the right of way. So.
Oh.
Is
Yes,
I don't know. It's a
may I?
motion for you.
You
guys.
may.
I make a motion that we approve the proposal and the site plan as presented with the condition that the right of way be restored as described by the city engineer. I second.
All those in favor, Barbara Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin,
Yes.
Sarah Wingert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
Anthony Moen, yes. The project is approved, subject to those conditions, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last item on old business. This is PLPC 2021-44, 2001 Fifth Avenue. The applicant present.
Good evening, Danny Sanders, Harris Sanders Architects, on behalf of the Janko Companies for 2001 Fifth Avenue LLC. The project renovation and addition on 2001 Fifth Avenue with a 2-story addition atop the existing 3-story masonry building. The comments from last meeting centered around the finishes and the color selections, and as well as clarifying the site plan. So I don't know if there's, is that going to, sorry. Thanks, Dash. And we resubmitted our drawings to reflect some changes and clarifications on the site plan.
You want the new site plan or render?
We can do the site plan, get that taken care of. Thank you. I think there was a question in terms of the parking spaces and being noted clearer So that's what this drawing reflects, the 49 spaces. So the white lines, I think, are clearer than the last presentation. And if we could go to these elevations. Being on the site. I'll pass these photos again.
The next page is basically different view of the building, but.
Yeah.
Doing that way.
Pages are rotated.
I'm on Bluebeam. He wants to cut it, okay?
Here's the so looking at the rendering, we added an extension bay as we turn the corner. So the elevations have been modified to reflect the comments also from last meeting. I think, Sarah, that was one thing that came up. And the aged pewter.
Can you just say what you just said?
Oh, I'm sorry. We added a bump out, an additional bump out on the elevation on the next one, sorry. Going up. Yeah, you got to kind of, yes, yes, thank you. Enjoy looking at that one that way. So we all tilt our head. Anyway, so that was the modification to the elevations, and then a clarification on the color selection on the upper right. You'll see the aged pewter noted, and that's what I passed around. And as well, the samples against the existing brick on site are on those pass outs as well. Metal coping would be slightly darker, as well as the canopies over the windows and the Juliet balconies.
Something that's jumping out immediately to me is the lintel in the existing building. It almost,
So that's how they,
it,
ask them.
I just feel like the lintels from the bottom half are begging to be brought into the top.
Oh, I didn't think you'd say that. I thought that they never fit the building. They were too.
Oh,
too narrow.
on the original building?
But I don't think there's anything you can do about it now. It's just, yeah, I don't think there's a problem.
Yeah.
Are there any other commissioner comments?
I'm just curious, because it reads as green, you're not proposing?
That's the color. That's why, again, it's a
Oh, I didn't see
computer.
the sample. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's,
Yeah, that's.
James Hardy makes about 8 varieties of gray, and we looked at least 8, maybe 10. And that's the aged pewter we felt it works with the grout, and there's nothing that really works better, we felt, in terms of giving it a punch to the elevation that we wanted and not necessarily looking like the one across the street, to put it bluntly. So not that there's anything wrong with that one, but I'm just saying that we wanted to differentiate it because it is a similar sort of finished material. And smooth faces, the preferred Hardy.
I don't know about you guys. I look at the windows down here and then I look.
Pardon?
I got a guy, man.
I can hear you, Roddy.
I said, I don't know about you guys, but when I look at it, I keep seeing the windows and comparing them between the bottom half and the top half. And the thing that stands out to me is just that the lintel over the top.
Yeah, but a lintel in a hardy plank would be a total lie.
It'd be an applied ornament, sort of,
Yeah.
put that term
It
out.
would definitely be ornamental.
I mean, you could put I suppose you could put another reveal, 4 inches above your horizontal, that head reveal, the window head reveal. But
When you say a reveal, can you just,
so
do you
these,
mean?
you can see like the score marks in the green. I'm just gonna keep calling it green, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
And-
so basically they're essentially reveals, control joints, whatever you want to call it. You could, to mimic that 4-inch band, you could add another one 4 inches above the top of the window.
Okay.
And it's like
I understand.
$10, right?
Right.
That might be worth it. I mean, you could try it, and
Yeah.
if it looks good,
Yeah,
then great. If
exactly.
not, then don't.
Right. I don't want it to look hokey, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So but again, hardy detail trim is much different.
Yep, definitely. But I think that as much as the design concept will all let you, you've married the two very different volumes
Yeah.
effectively. Yep.
I like this a lot better than last presentation.
Thank you.
Maybe I like that it's kind of green.
Yeah, can we have it green? Just joking. I think that'll look good with the red brick.
Are there any members of the public who wanted to comment on this proposal?
The cornice is also one of the better ones that I've seen on a newer building to match the style of the city.
Can someone, maybe it's you, Dash, just direct us to a planting plan if such exists? Oh, I rotated everything.
Yeah, there's page 4.
I think this is the closest you're gonna get to a plan.
Also page 4.
Although, well, actually, no, this is
Yeah.
actually better. Yeah.
All right, so the planting
this actually
will
calls them out,
be
yeah.
in the parking island.
Yeah, it looks like what's MA is it's an apple tree, of some sort, crab apple.
Crab apple.
Yeah.
And boxwoods and rhododendrons. Okay, thank you. Staff has no further comment or requirement.
Nope, not at this time.
In terms of the site work, this is a pretty, it's more about the architecture, I think.
Yeah, 'cause the site is basically as it is, except for the corner. Yeah.
What
Okay.
are,
Well, we need to make a secret determination, and if we feel like we have all the information, we can do that and potentially go to site plan review. The one thing it looks like we were looking for is detail on the architectural materials. So I think we've gotten some clarification on that. Unless there's anything further.
Yeah, I think the comment at the last meeting was to provide the level of detail that they provided here, which is calling out all of the different finishes and everything else. So, and then they also provided the sample.
Yeah.
So the commission may feel that they have enough information to do a secret determination tonight without enough information to do site plan approval. Unless the architectural comments could be made conditions of an approval, which which case then you guys could do it all this evening. I don't know if the architectural comments can be conditioned, though.
It sounds like we wanted to see some revised drawings, so maybe we should hold off or.
Is,
No?
This is a kind of separate question. The roof space, is it all just mechanical?
As of now. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's good from last one too, but yeah.
No less than about every building proposed. Going forward in Troy.
Do you mind elaborating on the naming of the project? I'm just curious about the rise. It hasn't come up much. I'm just curious behind that. That's it.
We have two buildings out in Albany.
Okay.
So what we typically try to do is our tenants is we let them, if they are living in Albany and how to get a job in Troy, we'll let them kind of transfer within our properties to make it easier for them. So, and the branding under one big brand.
Cool. Thank you. Just curious.
I like Darren's answer better.
I think because the site is really not being changed much other than the planting. That we have enough information for, well, certainly I think for a secret determination and possibly also for site plan review. So, sorry. Is that I think we have enough information for a secret determination and possibly also for site plan review tonight. So one of the commissioners wants to make a motion.
And I'm just confirming that we are lead agency.
That's correct. This is actually an unlisted action. Unlisted actions, you guys are lead agency as long as you want to be. Right. We don't send out notifications on unlisted actions.
Okay, so therefore I make a motion to issue a negative declaration for seeker.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, Barbara Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin,
Yes.
Sarah Wengert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
and Anthony Moan. I vote yes as well. Motion carries. And then the question is whether there's any information that the commissioners have outstanding that we want before we can make a determination on site plan. We don't have to take that action tonight, but if we feel like we have all the information we need, then we can do that as well with conditions if we want to impose any.
I would be inclined to make a motion with the understanding that we will want, so we have this. Metal paint finish and aluminum window finish, or whatever your window is, that it will be a consistent.
Black aluminum.
Okay. Great.
Metal painting, darker. If we could supply at a later time.
Good. In that case, I make a motion that we approve the proposal as presented with the condition that final materials be submitted, the primary exterior materials. The hardy board. No, we'd like a little packet. So that with the aluminum, and if metal edge is different, and those are really the exterior finishes. Any exterior paint that might be a different color. So that when you're under construction, we can see that you're doing what you told us you were gonna do.
Metal coping, metal windows.
That's it.
I second that.
Moving to a vote, all those in favor, Barbara Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin,
Yes.
Sarah Wengert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
and Anthony Moan, yes. Motion carries. The proposal is approved 5-0, subject to those conditions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one slight scheduling change, Chair. If we could reorganize the new business this evening and move Carlisle Avenue up to the first item, followed by Taylor Apartments, and then followed lastly by 309 8th Street. I think that might work better.
Sure. So I don't know if everyone heard that, but we're moving to new business, but the first item we will hear is PLPC 2021-52. This is Carlisle Avenue. Do we have the applicant available?
I believe the applicant's joining us by Zoom this evening.
Yes, hello.
Hi, can you please state your name for the record?
There's Ishmael Kurdi, Kurti.
Yes, thank you for attending via Zoom. Please proceed with your presentation.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So what we like to do, that we like to see if we can, as I'm aware, the lots were existing 2 lots and they were broken down to 1 lot. So see if I can propose to put 2 ranch style homes.
We're pulling up the site plan for you now.
I mean, I can shed a little bit of light on this.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was gonna speak for him. He chimed in before I could. Fred Metzger, land surveyor.
Yeah, if you don't mind, it's okay. I think I can do this one.
All right, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, sure. So this is a lot that crossed my desk a little while ago. The property had been recently sold, and prior to the sale, the owner decided to merge 2 lots together. So this lot, which is encapsulated by the two blue lines here, used to be 2 separate lots that were simply oriented horizontally. Okay, and right before the sale, the owner decided to merge them, and so Mr. Hassan here has purchased the property and would like to create the 2 lots again, although they're proposing a slightly different layout, which is more compliant with our zoning code. So it's essentially a mini flag lot where there would be a shared access off of Carlisle Avenue. Carlisle Avenue would not have to be extended. This is not a roadway extension. This was a previous existing 2 existing lots. It is an existing building lot currently. So this subdivision would more or less comply. I think there's a couple of small variances required. And other than those variances, this would be a by right subdivision.
Meaning they don't. What does that mean by right?
Meaning you'd have to have, you can't deny it because they're creating 2 lots. Right. You can't deny it because you don't like the idea. It is allowed.
It's sort of as of right, without a children.
Correct.
Okay, and then the other thing is on Carlisle, is it the end of Carlisle? Because there's no buildings there now.
Correct. Carlisle, the right of way of Carlisle extends further than the existing pavement out there. The applicant would be providing essentially what is a driveway off of the end of Carlisle. So they're not changing the street in any way. They're just simply providing a driveway off of a dead end street.
What end of it is it on?
I'm sorry?
What end of it? North, south?
It's the north end of Carlisle. So actually, if you'll see, there's a purple line that bisects Carlisle Avenue at that weird angle. That's the town line, city line. So we're in the city of Troy, and all of this work just avoids the town of Brunswick.
Wow.
Water and sewer are available as well. There's existing infrastructure all the way. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the property to the south, well, generally this is a single family area. The property to the south, I believe, is a multifamily development. Freddie, is that right?
It's a Center for Disability Services. So I'm not sure if it's multifamily. I don't know exactly how it's set up. You know, if it's set up there for disabled individuals, and then they have people come that look over them regularly, and then take them in and out of the place.
Community residents.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, they reside there as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Were there any members of the public who wanted to comment on this application? either here or via Zoom? Okay.
This would have been on consent, except it's an unlisted action. So it's a subdivision of land.
And are we correct that the ZBA still needs to issue a variance?
So the variances are actually 3, and they all relate to the area of the lots. So we've one variance is for the lot size, one is for density, and one is for frontage. So they all relate to the same aspect of the lot, the same deficiency, which is, I believe we require 3,500 square feet for single family residence, I think, and we're just shy of that on 7,500.
You know, does this lot need to be cleared? I'm looking at it.
Not anymore. Right off my desk.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Yeah, we got a call from a resident in Brunswick concerned about the clearing at the end of our land. The clearing was completely legal. He did not require a permit to do that.
So that land got divided and recombined despite just being covered in trees?
Correct. Again, it was originally 2 lots owned by the same individual. I think the plan for them was maybe to build a single family residence on both lots. Then for whatever reason, again, they combined them prior to sale, which would not have been advisable, but was done, and now we're looking to sell that.
Are there any other commissioner comments or questions?
None from me.
So we basically need to first determine seeker, and then if we feel we have enough information, we can vote for site plan approval, although it would have to be subject to any outstanding variance applications.
Perfect.
I will make a motion that we issue a negative seeker determination.
I'll second that. All those in favor, Barbara Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin,
Yes.
Sarah Wingert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
and Anthony Moan. I vote yes. Motion carries. And then to approve the subdivision review, we have a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the proposed subdivision pending the issuance of all required variances by the zoning board of appeals. Second.
All those in favor, Barbara Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin,
Yes.
Sarah Wingert,
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
and Anthony Moan, yes. The proposal is approved 5-0, subject to obtaining all required variances.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
So as Aaron said, we're shifting the agenda slightly, so we'll now move to PLPC 2020-73. This is Taylor Apartments, Building 1. And as
What's up?
No, that's gonna be last. It'll be after.
yes, sorry. The other item on the new business agenda, PLPC 2021-30 is going to be heard this evening. We're just moving it to the end of the agenda. So anybody who's here to comment on that, we will be next.
It actually isn't, because we have a member that needs to recuse themselves from that project. And so it's more convenient to do it in this order.
I am also going to have to. Myself.
I got. Oh, you could have gone home early.
Hope I didn't screw up their dash.
Oh, you can just grab it. I should just order it right now. Yes.
Just use the PDF. You don't have to use the PowerPoint.
Members of the commission,
There we go.
who wants to be the chair?
Oh, geez. I'll do it and then I'm gonna run. Okay, thank you. Now we will hear a presentation for the Taylor Apartments Building 1 at 125 River Street. That's PLPC 2020-0073. This is a site plan amendment. We have seen this project presented before. Roger Keating from Chazen will make the presentation.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is, again, Roger Keating from the Chazen Companies. Here tonight on behalf of Penrose, Taylor LLC, and Troy Housing Authority to present the revised vision for the Taylor Apartments project. Been here a long night tonight, so I'm going to abbreviate some of this presentation for you folks since the project has been seen before. So Dash, if you wouldn't mind just going to the next slide, I'll just give it a point of context here. So the Taylor Apartments project site is currently the two buildings for Taylor 1 and Taylor 2. They're at along River Street, adjacent. It's basically surrounded by all right-of-ways with Congress Street, First Street Alley, and Ferry Street. And the proposed project will be the redevelopment of that with a new 7-story building, mixed use with 140 affordable apartments. The project will ultimately have to demolish these two buildings to support the new development. You can go a couple slides down to the rendered site plan, and then I'll have you skip back. Right there's fine. So basically what we have is, as we previously proposed, the major change to the project is not revolving around the site plan itself. The changes is that the building height is getting taller with some additional density from what we had seen previously. So we had a 5-story building proposed previously. We'll now have a 7-story building. There's 85 units, I believe, the last time, 140 proposed this time. As part of this plan, the site plan still remains the same because the building footprint didn't change, it just went up. So all of the associated improvements associated with the landscaping that was along River Street, as well as the parking in the rear, all remain the same. We have access to water, sewer, storm, all the utilities are right there. Just to bring back some of the board members' memories. So the building was up against Congress Street. That was right up on the property line, consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, especially for that downtown portion. Along River Street, there's plans envisioned for the reconnecting of River Street from as part of a grander plan with the city to get the Congress Street Bridge reconfigured so that we can get the interconnectivity with River Street on the north end and the south there. So as part of that plan, we made sure that we factored in the placement of the Taylor building to ensure that it was set back enough from the right of way so that we could accommodate that in the future as well. So when we factored that into the design. Would you mind going back a slide or two to where the, yes, right there, zoning variances? So we do need to go back to the zoning board. We were granted some setback relief previously. We didn't change any of that as part of this plan. So really the only two things that we're looking for is the density relief again, with respect to what's there now, the 9-story buildings has buildings are obviously taller and there's more units within those buildings than what we're proposing as part of this planned project. And we're providing additional parking spaces over on site than what's there today. And I should also note that there's some additional off-site parking that's associated at the existing Taylor 3 building that would also be available for this project as it moves forward. So we'll have to go back to the zoning board for amending 2 of those variances. But with respect to the other 2, they'll be unchanged from what we had provided the last time out. I have with me is Dash from Datner Architects. I'll turn it over to Dash really quick from, I'm not sorry, Dash. I'm sorry.
Dash is about to dash.
Dash, I'm so sorry. It's been a night. But Rem from Datner Architects.
We
So
were
so-
going to see how fast you are.
so sorry. And I will, I'll let Rem actually provide a brief update on the building changes. And I'll turn it over to you from that perspective.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. As Roger said, my name is Rem Brun. I'm from Datner Architects. If you could scroll down a couple more to the context. This one, no, up one. Yeah, just for the historical context.
If I could just pause you for one moment.
Sure.
I feel like I'm looking at a different presentation. This
Yep.
is-
I'm going to get you some copies of the slides I have here just to help you out.
Maybe you already guys.
Thank you.
Could you at the start of this just drop back and tell us why it's 7 stories all over versus 5 stories? That's a very major change.
I mean, I think probably the owner can speak better to this than I can, but it really has to do with, this is an affordable housing project, and the financing makeup, the way it worked out, it was really only possible and converted to 140 unit, 7-story, with a different unit mix and income mix. That's the general reason for the change.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dylan from Penrose. The question was, why did the building change from a 5-story building to a 7-story building? The 5-story building was not awarded the financing that it was seeking. And the 7-story building allows us to access non-competitive sources of financing. So that's why we're pursuing the 7-story variant.
So you couldn't finance it.
Yeah, that went over my head.
Okay, sorry.
Repeat and
I'll
slow
repeat.
down a little bit.
Yep, the 5-story building applied for financing in January to the state. The 5-story building was not awarded financing. So we're pursuing financing from a different state agency for the 7-story building that would make it for a non-competitive application.
So what was that first state agency that turned it down?
DHCR.
And what's the, how does it go through the other way?
The other way will go through New York State HFA.
Which, okay, I won't say anything else. That's New York City.
Current Taylor buildings are 9 stories.
Yes, but they're thinner.
Yes, I'm just stating it for
This
anyone
is
who
a very,
cares.
very major change. And I'm surprised that it's the financing. Is it just a 1-year thing, or in another year you might be able to get it at the 5-story?
I think the strategy is the 7-story. That's the way the financing is working. So I don't think there's a plan to go back to the 5-story. But I will say, when I talk about the architecture, I think you'll see that the size of the building, the scale actually works quite nicely, especially as compared to the existing buildings and even the building kitty corner, 155 River Street. So just to start at that place, I think the concept, when we looked at the site initially, and the idea of stitching the urban fabric further south along River Street, we were struck by these, late 19th, early 20th century commercial buildings, some of which are in great condition, and it's a beautiful building stock. And we saw an opportunity to take cues from those, as we built this project, build up the street wall on this development site, and at the same time bring in some contemporary moves and materials to really tie it into the neighborhood fabric. So if you could move down one slide. It's a little dark on the screen. I don't know if you have better versions in front of you, but this is really the same concept for the envelope and the massing that we had previously. It is 2 stories taller. So previously it was a 5-story with a step down to 4 at the southern, 60% of the building. Now it's a 7-story across, but we've introduced a setback, at about 120 feet south of the north end of the building. So the materials and the play in the envelope depth are the same as the concept we had previously, which again is referencing some of those older buildings and really trying to get a lot of depth and shadow on the envelope and on the building, and really replicate some of those moves. Like we have brick piers at regular intervals. We have the stepping in and out of the brick, and then we have this third material, the metal panel, that steps back to an even deeper plane, which we think creates, a nice historic mix with a contemporary feel on the building. And it's actually kitty corner to 155 River Street, which has an almost identical height and has a similar move where there's a higher mass at the corner of the building. So it'll be a kind of a nice reflection of that historic building. In terms of the palette, it's as previously, we have mostly red brick. We do have some gray brick at the base of the building, a dark gray brick, and then a lighter metal panel for this central move that moves up to the top of the building and accentuates that sort of cornice of the building around the corner at the north end. The other material that we have is ephes, which we had previously on the back of the building. Now what we're doing is wrapping it around the south end and then up along River Street at the setback location. So that volume kind of wraps around nicely and separates from the brick volume of the building. There's also 2 tones of each material in terms of the metal panel and the ephes, and we use that to create groupings of windows. So again, I'm sorry, it's a little dark on the screen, but on the facade, the windows on 2 to 3 floors are grouped and step up and down to give it a little bit of playfulness. And likewise, in the top, you can see it, the gray setback on the right-hand side, that's the ephes material. That would have a darker ephes material to create those 2-story groupings. There's retail at the ground floor that will wrap the north corner along River to Congress Street. The main entrance is still on River Street. And then what we are providing also is an enlarged management suite and an enlarged community room for the residents. And then there are still some apartment units running south along River Street. If you go to the next page, this is the back of the building facing First Street Alley. So this is where that ephes on the back of the building runs along the majority of the envelope and then wraps around the bottom of the building to the setback, which you can see on the bottom left elevation. We thought here it was better to keep it nice and simple, 3-story groupings. It helps break down the mass and a lighter material so that it doesn't feel as dark on that side of the building, on the north side, or on the east side rather. That's essentially it conceptually. If you go to the next one, I think the last slide, oh, sorry, we do have a material palette as well. This is showing the different materials. Doesn't always show up great on screen, but again, it's a red brick. We're showing here a gentle blend. It's not necessarily final, but it's generally the idea. The dark gray brick at the bottom left, and then the 2 shades of metal panel and the 2 shades of ephes proposed. And then finally, I think the next one is, oh, one more thing, the section. This is a section if you were on Congress Street looking south. So what you're seeing here is the north elevation of the building with River Street, heading down River Street. And this just shows you not only that the existing Taylor Houses buildings were much closer up to the property line along River, they're actually a little bit taller than the proposed building. So I think that this building, volumetrically does a lot of things for the site. It brings the height down slightly. It brings it back away from that street wall. So for as long as that ramp is going up, you'll have a nice activated landscape space along River Street. And it creates that street wall that's missing from the existing buildings. Next slide. And this is the rendering of the updated building. This is at the corner of River and Congress looking southeast. So you can see the setback at the far right-hand side, floors 6 and 7, which helps, we think, keep the massing a little bit lower, but provides some great units in that space as well.
Just to summarize, so we do have to go back to the zoning board for our variances for this project. We did provide a new seeker, so we're looking to start the seeker process again, because we went through the whole seeker process the first time around. We did circulate, so we'd like to get that process started. But I will turn it back to the board. I'm sure you may have questions on the building and such. So
Can you explain the solar panels, how that's going to affect the building?
You asked about the solar panels?
Yeah.
So I think there was a concept to have solar panels on the roof. That may still be in the mix. It's not certain how much area could be provided, but that is potentially in the design. We may also try and use some of the rooftop space as an exterior space for tenants. That's still being resolved in design.
I've worked on solar installations on rooftops like this. Actually, up on Peebles Island, we did a project where they were installed. I can tell you that that's a lot of space to work with.
It is, but we also have the mechanical system for the building is VRFs. So we have a lot of condensers up on the roof as well. You can do a pergola system for the solar. There's obviously ways to work around it, but has to work with the design and the budget as well.
You may have heard me mention it earlier. One of my I don't know the word for it, but something I look at on every project is what we're doing with the roof space, and I like to see more use, like occupied, not continuously occupied, but common space, event space, something like that on rooftops, especially along the river. That's a huge opportunity for making use of that amenity. Solar panel may not be the best thing, or maybe used on some of the other buildings, but along the river space, there's a huge opportunity to have rooftop space to use.
Certainly. I mean, I totally agree. And the views are beautiful as well. So
exactly. Another thing, this came to the board before I was a part, so pardon me asking questions that have probably already been covered, but how does the phasing and timing of the project work with the road changes, the changes to the right of way?
Congress Ferry.
Yeah. How does that all play together?
This phase doesn't really come into play with that. The demolition, the ultimate demolition of all of the buildings and the resiting of a few of them will provide the real estate necessary to do that project.
Okay.
But I believe the order of operations on those projects would be impacted necessarily.
So this particular building,
this particular phase, that is why it's this phase, right? Financing might be also part of it, but this absolutely does not need that project to move forward in order to accomplish it. The other ones would have to coordinate, but not this phase.
okay. Another general comment, this to me, that specific rendering is the most character consistent new building I have seen so far proposed for Troy. It makes me want to go back and reconsider the decisions I made on other projects.
Thank you.
I still think there's always room for some improvements, but there's clearly an attention to detail here There's a tray sort of theme to it that I like. The brick, of course, it's perfect for Troy. Those are just initial takeaways for me.
Thank you. And I think, the nice thing also is that the client and the architect are all committed to this facade that provides this depth, especially when you look at the existing buildings, which have just these flat, shadowless facades. We really wanted to provide some kind of depth and, bring some of those historical cues into it. And just to go back to the previous question about the phasing, that is part of the reason why the site plan is laid out such that the building is pulled back and it provides that space so that, for the 5 or 10 years until the bridge is modified, there really is that landscape area that's a nice buffer between that and the building itself.
Can you pinpoint for us, and Dash, we're gonna need your help. Do you mind pulling up the elevations again? I just want to see where the ephes is versus metal panel. And also, I don't know that I know where the gray brick is versus red brick. I know it's hard without a pointer, but.
Sure. So starting on this one, the northern or the right, those little squares is metal panel. The entire volume to the left of it, which is over the parking area, that's the ephes facade. And the ground floor on that elevation is the dark gray brick.
What view of this?
Yeah, so that's dark gray brick. And above that is the ephes, this is all facing the alley. Yeah, correct. And then if you,
And so Sage College looks at this facade, yes?
if they're high up enough, yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And if you go, I think the bottom left of this slide shows, so this is the south elevation. So here you can see the mass kind of wrapping around from the alley to Berry Street. And that's the ephes on the right-hand side from floors 2 to 7. And then that wraps to the setback going back north along River Street. That makes sense. And then all of the openings within the red brick, including at the north end of the building, which is far left, kind of grayed out bit of this, those are all the metal panel roofings. Yeah. And at the north, like the top left of the elevation, where it pops up, that's metal panel.
Is any portion of this, either of these facades, ephes?
Yes. Where your finger is right now,
This piece here,
that's ephes.
just that?
Correct. At the setback.
Yep.
I'm not following how the south elevation lines up with what it looks like from the south on the cover sheet.
Oh, the master plan image? Right, that's a little bit outdated. That also shows, I think, the 5-story envelope.
It does.
Yeah.
That's what part of what was confusing me.
Yeah, because I'm loving that.
And I do agree with Roddy though, that the rendering, that is a very beautiful building. I guess I still have a problem with the whole size of the building. So before it was 85 units. Before it was 85 units and now it's 140. So does that mean that's all that it'll need? The 140 will take care of all the needs, whereas the 85 wasn't going to take care of all the needs?
When you say the needs of the two buildings,
Yeah.
yeah, so buildings 3 and 4,
Yeah.
which
Well,
are to the west,
Yeah.
all of the residents of those fit in this building and then some,
And then buildings 1 and 2.
which are vacant. Those are vacant
they're
already.
vacant, so that you don't have to worry about those
Right.
people. Yeah. Okay. So the 85 units wasn't going to do that.
Correct.
So the point,
That's a better reason to do.
Yeah, that's true. So it accommodates more of the existing tenants from the other phases. Mind you, they also potentially have the opportunity to move into phases 2 and 3 of this development in the future. So, yeah.
Are there members of the public who would like to make a comment? Yes. Your name and address, please.
My name is Sandra Rouse. I live at 159 First Street. I am in the neighborhood of the Taylor Apartments, so I'm very excited to see a huge improvement in that area. In addition to the change in the Congress Street traffic flow, getting rid of those ramps would be wonderful. In general, I would say this project looks fabulous on a flat screen. I'm very much in favor of the look of the apartments. And I want this to really work for everyone. What I'm really disappointed in is the 7-story building choice. And the reason for choosing it was because of a funding issue. The gentleman described a building at 155 River Street. I'm not sure which building that is, but the way I see the neighborhood, Taylor Apartments is right on the campus of Sage. And most of those buildings are not 7 stories high. If you look down the river south from Taylor, you know, we're residential neighborhoods, so we're mostly three-story buildings. When you come to Adams Street, the newest development is 2 River, and that's a 5-story building. A 7-story building is considerably larger. And if you think of a 7-story building with respect to the 3-story buildings of the residential homes in that area, that's almost twice the height. So I am begging for an interest in the human scale. And I think that the original plan of a 5-story building was fine. The reason given for this 7-story building is something to do with funding sources, which of course, that's not something I'm knowledgeable about, but it doesn't sit with me as a person who lives in the neighborhood to say, okay, well, let's just, you know, we're coming down from 9 and 7, you know, we're going to give you 2 stories. No, that's not enough. 5 would have been a much better choice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandy Dagler. I live at 128 First Street. I will echo a lot of what Sandra Rouse just said. The residential portion of this neighborhood is mostly 3 and a few 4-story buildings. So to have a 7-story building is really out of scale with the residential areas of this neighborhood. And in my view, the Taylor Apartments being towers, they've always been kind of separate from the neighborhood. We have a neighborhood group and we tried to include residents from the Taylor Apartments in our neighborhood group. And it was really difficult to get to know people and to really integrate them into the neighborhood. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that they were in a tower and the rest of us were in these 2, 3, and 4-story row houses. So I would ask the planning committee to please take that into consideration, the residential scale of the neighborhood. 5 stories is much better than 7 stories, in my opinion. Thank you.
Sorry, my name is John Kane. I'm at 161 Washington Street. I would like to echo the concerns of the previous women that this is out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood. I understand that the Taylor buildings are 9 stories, but if the project was approved at 5 stories, that is more in scale with the rest of downtown Troy. This is a considerable height increase. And while I understand that there might be funding issues, that's a catch-all phrase for what could be a wide number of issues. You know, if the state agency is saying you have to have a 15% margin per year, and you're on the loans that you're taking out, that could be solved by having the developer simply put more money in up front. I don't know what those reasons are, but just adding more density seems like a very easy solution for the developer without much thought to the neighborhood. I would also like to add that parking is already extremely difficult in this neighborhood. This is a significant number of additional units, and I think that that should be taken into consideration as you guys are reviewing this amendment. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the public? I do have one question, and you've probably already said it more than once, but this is purely Is this, forgive me, is this HUD housing straightforward? Is there any mixed income component to the program? Or is this low income housing?
Hey, Zach, can you hear me?
Yes.
The building will, as with the prior version, incorporate a mix of units at 80% of area median income, which is effectively market rate rents here. So it will include a mix of incomes from 30 up to 80.
Thank you.
Dash, could you pull up again, sorry to beat a dead horse here, but to go to the cover sheet? I'm just trying to wrap my head around layout of
This one. Is that correct? This is
Yeah, that's correct. If you were to go to like the second slide, or in the presentation, slide 3, I'm sorry. One more down. There you go. So there you can see the phase 1 building, the Tiger Street Bridge, Taylor Apartments, 3 and 4 on either side in River Street there. So it gives you a good placement as to where this building lives.
This plan also illustrates the phasing. So you can see how the phase 1 building can be constructed, right, without demolition. And then the intersection of Ferry and River that's being proposed actually can be constructed without demolishing the buildings. It's the next phase of the Taylor project that would require or would benefit from, in addition to all of the residents of the city, would benefit from the realigning of that intersection.
And is the Taylor existing, is that building 3 and that's 4?
So even for phase 1, when we looked at it in this plan view, we compared southern elevation to that, it almost seems flip-flop. The southern elevation would be looking at it this way. It looks to me like in the elevation view, the eastern half of it is closer to the reference.
Yeah, sorry, what's misleading about that elevation is that's looking like straight on to that end elevation at the south end, which is angled to the building, right? So the left half, which is a little bit gray on that little elevation, is really the River Street elevation we're looking at. It's not the back of the building.
This wall, this angle.
Yeah.
So it's showing you this wall grayed out on that.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
And because of the angles in that elevation, it's also just foreshortened a little bit. So the edge is just skewed.
Okay.
Do other commissioners have questions?
Does this phase include a similar portion where it'll have the raised like green space on the east side?
Yep, so the green space, there's green space along River Street in that setback zone. So if you look at the rendering there, you'll see the green space that takes place along River Street. And then at the south end as well, in between Ferry and the building, there's also green space there. Street trees along Congress Street, and there's a small amount of green space in the back alley as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I think the question is about in the aerial image from the master planning drawing is the covered parking decks for future phase 2 and 3. That green that you're talking about on the interior of the building shape? Yeah.
So not doing the same thing on this.
Correct. There's no coverage to the parking lot on the back of phase 1.
So the only difference essentially between the previous proposal and this one is the addition of 2 stories. The site plan itself hasn't really changed at all.
That's correct. Site plan is the same. Building height has gone up.
So this is being treated then as a site plan amendment.
Right, but I believe we have to reintroduce something into seeker on that, correct?
Yeah, yes, you do. This is if the board determines that the addition of the 2 stories and the addition of the number of units constitutes a substantial change to the approved site plan, which I believe it would, then you have to consider whether or not to amend your negative declaration or rescind your negative declaration. They're 2 separate processes. If you have sufficient information to review the new proposed changes and all of the potential impacts flowing therefrom, not just the increase in height and visual impact, but also water and sewer usage, pedestrian accommodations, parking, because the number of units is increasing in this particular building. All those things would have to be reanalyzed before you could consider a negative declaration. And in terms of the height, again, it would be an analysis of the increased height, and the visual impacts of that would have to be analyzed for the first time. If you do all that and believe that there are still no potential large adverse impacts, then you can amend the previous negative declaration and incorporate these changes. If you think that you don't have sufficient information to make those decisions tonight, we should request that information from the applicant. And then at your next meeting, you can consider whether or not to amend it or whether or not it needs to be rescinded. If you want to rescind it and say this is such a change, we have to throw everything out we've done before and start all over in terms of seeker, then that requires notification to all of the other involved agencies as well that you're contemplating rescinding the neg deck. I don't know if we're at that point, but I also don't know if you have sufficient information to determine that there would be no adverse impacts based upon the proposed changes.
I simply feel that I need more time to look through it all. It's not that I know for sure that I have or don't have any and all materials. I just would like more time to review them.
And that's a perfectly acceptable answer. This is it's a substantial change, and it may take some time to digest. That's perfectly reasonable. I don't blame you at all for stating that.
I would concur, and I just have one more question. 155 River, does anybody know how, like your diet? 5 stories. No, I know, but the stories are much greater than this proposed building, at least the first level. So I'm just curious to see how that stacks up, because that was a bit of a benchmark for the first time we saw this project. And
Yeah, we did an analysis. Mind you, it's not scientific. We don't have a surveyed height of the top of the building, but we have a brick size and brick count, and studied the elevation. That building actually ends up, the elevation of the roof is almost identical to what's being proposed here. I think it was within a foot.
yeah, because those floor to floors are much greater.
Yeah, and
there's
that
also
volume
grade
of the
over
corner also has that extended, you know, it's got like a little small 6th floor, I think. So yeah, it's roughly identical in height.
The other point I would make is that this meeting did not have 7 days agenda out there. So this project is quite new and does need to have a proper, it would be nice if the agenda was posted 7 days ahead the next time that this comes up. I'm still struck by how much I love this picture.
Agreed.
I think the architect did a wonderful job. And I just think so.
What software?
Thank you.
Software.
The
is
other
that?
thing is to redo that front page, because I've just got myself so confused with that. And it does look like the 155 River Street doesn't, on this picture, does not line up with, you know, right across from that. This one is more into the downtown, this taller building. But then you said this is really quite right, so I don't want to rely on it. Okay, yes.
We seem to be very focused on height. I just want to remind the board, this is an R5 zone. It is quite literally the highest density residential zone we have, and the max height is 150 feet.
And they've done a beautiful job.
And this is half that.
Yeah, and they've done a beautiful job of making the building not seem overly large. So I'm not throwing that out as a major monkey wrench. I'm just saying that
It's just going back to your 2 gas stations on either corner thing, right? There's certain things that can't be considered. I would suggest that if the height is allowed by zoning code, that perhaps
Well,
that
the
not be
True,
such
but
a
we have
focus.
had these conversations about other projects too.
But, and also, if, again, if the building was not this beautifully designed and in ways to make it appear not as bulky and overbearing as it could have been. So, I mean, that again speaks to its favor. It's the design of the building, very, very carefully done. But so this, if you can redo that front thing, and I think it has to have a new seat.
Agreed.
Thank you.
But nice job.
Thank you.
I think, you know, your misfortune is that we really fell in love with the 5-story as not just the architecture, but the accessibility of it, the scale, just like so many other people have said. And so to backpedal a little bit, I think programmatically, to me, it's not even the height. It's just, that's a lot of people.
It's the bulk of it.
That's a lot of people in one building. And so I think we just need to stew on it a little bit.
I think you said this to start with, but is the plan for the other buildings to match the same number of stories across all 4
I don't
replacements?
think we've commented on that. I don't think that that's been resolved yet. I don't think financing has been figured out in the site plan for those 2 sites. The original master plan did have proposed heights, but it'll depend on each phase independently.
Would anyone like to make a motion of any kind?
I'll make a motion to table this until next month's meeting. I forgot the date.
November 17th.
November 17th.
But before you table, I heard from Barbara that she doesn't believe this should fall under the previous secret determination.
Oh,
If every board member feels the same way, just by a show
Yes.
of hands,
Thank you.
we can't table it to the next meeting because it's going to take us 30 days to notify agencies. The soonest this could be heard again would be December. I would also then recommend, if there's any additional information that members need to, within the week, provide that to my office so that we
Agreed.
can forward it on, because that would be a shame to waste 2 months waiting just for notifications to come back.
Thanks, Aaron. I was going to jump in, but you beat me to the punch.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Aaron.
I wanted to just make sure procedurally, Andy, that, you know, if this is the direction they're going, we don't lose, you know, that time, you know, from that perspective. So.
If what I'm hearing is the board thinks it would be most appropriate to rescind the prior negative declaration and reconsider seeker, then the motion tonight would be a motion to consider rescinding, and that triggers the 30-day notice where Aaron can provide to the other involved agencies you're considering rescinding it. And at that time, if you haven't done so already, submit a new long environmental
Which we
assessment
have
form,
provided
which
the
I believe
city.
we have. And then if no other involved agencies have an issue with the rescission, then when you come back in December, you'll have the new long form and any other materials provided for you to conduct your secret analysis based upon the 7-story, you know, more unit type proposal.
You said consider, like we'd be notifying them just that we're considering rescinding, not that we had
Yes,
rescinded?
under the regulations that you notify them that you are considering rescinding it. And then they would have the opportunity to comment, no, that's a bad idea. Yes, that's a great bad idea, or ignore you. And then at your next meeting or at the end of the 30 days, you could actually pass a motion rescinding it. And then you could do it the same night and consider the seeker and act again on seeker the same night.
But we would have to declare again, correct?
No, you're lead
Well,
agency.
Sorry,
You guys are lead agency. You were lead agency. You still are lead agency. You're not rescinding your position. You're rescinding your previous decision. And if no involved agencies object to that, then you would reconsider seeker based upon the new information. Much like all seeker regulations, it's not straightforward. It's a little complicated. I file.
And why could a new long form not be issued to us prior to a November 17th meeting?
Oh, it could. You may have it already.
You have it.
Already. Yeah. You do have a new.
So why do we have to wait until December?
Because
Because
under
we
the-
have to note, if
you have to
if you were treating this as a rescinding your previous decision, then it would have to go through, we have to provide 30-day written notice to the other involved agencies again.
By
And
their,
that 30 days would put us right before the next meeting, or I'm sorry, right after the next meeting.
After that.
And Andy has
By
explained
2
how to
days.
do that.
And again, that's one option. The other option is you have the ability to amend your prior negative declaration. If you were considering amending it, you still review the new long environmental assessment form, but you don't have to notice involved agencies of your intent to rescind. And then if you do agree to amend and issue a negative deck based upon the new information as an amended neg deck, you would then notify all the involved agencies, we amended our neg deck, here it is, but it happens after the fact.
And so that path could lead to a November meeting.
Yes, that path, if you were considering amending your negative declaration, that could lead to a November.
If you proceed that way with an amended review, and for some reason at the next meeting, you're provided information which makes you want to rescind your previous decision, we're now out 2 months from that meeting.
Understood.
So it's just sort of,
There's a risk.
Well, yeah, we should just decide.
but you should decide what you want to do.
And just, again, I don't mean to overcomplicate it, it's late, but if you're considering amending your neg deck, you have to end up back on a neg deck. If something happens where you decide a neg deck isn't appropriate, that's the rescission avenue.
We have more flexibility, but we keep it going forward by the
With
way that
amended.
Andy first
Yeah.
described it.
Yes.
And then all you have to do is so move. Are you comfortable to move what Andy said?
yes.
I so move.
So
Does that
it's just,
require a motion?
Yes.
it's a motion to table the application until November 17th for additional consideration by board members of the information provided.
Which is
Didn't I start?
the motion that Roddy
I was gonna say,
made.
didn't I make that?
And you just gave a warning. Okay,
Oh,
okay.
I so move, Andy.
I second the motion. Oh, right. Yes. All in favor, Barb Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin.
Yes.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
and Sarah Wenger, yes.
Thank you.
Any further material that we feel we need, we will provide that list to you within 1 week, 7 days.
Aaron's office and then to me.
The next and final project to be presented is PLPC 2021-0030, 39 8th Street. Here to present is Sarah Drury of Chazen Engineering, representing Unity House. For this project, I will recuse myself as this is my client.
I also just need to disclose, I work for Peter Louisi and Brothers Contracting, who is working as a subcontractor to BBL, who's doing work for Unity House on other completely separate projects. There is no overlap, to my knowledge, between the projects, but I don't believe there's any conflict of interest. I'm just letting everyone know for transparency's sake.
And for the record, Commissioner Yagan approached me before the meeting and asked, provided me the fact situation. And what I advised him is, as long as it's a situation where he's not personally involved in the project, not personally involved in any type of awarding contracts to the subs for the project, and the project isn't contingent upon, any approvals where he sits as a member of the board, it's not a per se conflict, but I had recommended he disclose it anyway, which he's done in full transparency.
Thank you, Roddy.
We're good.
Please
Good
go
evening,
forward.
everyone. My name is Sarah Drury with the Chazen Companies. I am representing Unity House of Troy on a project at 309 8th Street. They are proposing for a change of use of the existing building at 309 8th Street from an existing administrative use to a 6-bedroom situational crisis residence that will serve as a residence for adults having acute symptoms of their mental illness. As part of this project, adjacent to the current building is a asphalt parking lot. We are going to remove and reinstall the parking lot to provide adequate drainage, which the current parking lot currently doesn't have, as well as handicap accessibility through the parking lot, which they currently don't have. The accessible route will be through the existing ramp into the existing building. We are also proposing to construct 2 staircases to lead to the same landing pad as the handicap ramp. One of the stairs, as shown in the site plan, will bring users down to the back of the building where there is going to be a 20 by 20 concrete pad that they will use just as an outdoor space, picnic tables, whatnot. And then the blank space behind the parking lot, Unity House has decided that they're going to clean up and clear and grub that space because it's horrendously overgrown. And we're going to modify the slope slightly to have a more gentle, uniform slope because we're going to be touching it for the stairs anyway. As you guys are aware, we received a change of use variance on September 1st, and the ZBA also approved the area variance for a parking deficiency on October 6th. So we've already gone through the ZBA. We're just seeking site plan approval at this point.
Thank you. Are there any commissioner comments? Sorry, are there any commissioner comments?
I'd like to hear community comments first.
Okay, so we will open the floor up to public comments. Although I do want to just say before we go there that as the applicant has stated, the change of use was already approved. I know we do have some written comments regarding the change of use.
There's very limited purview I believe the board would have over this site plan at this point.
Right.
Because it's not about the use, right? It would be about how the approved use fits into the neighborhood.
Right.
So lighting, security, comments on parking, things like that, but comments related to the use itself and whether or not it's acceptable in the neighborhood. It's
right.
immaterial to what's in front of you.
So I am going to ask the public keep that in mind and limit your comments to comments on the site plan. With that said, we open the public hearing.
And that was the.
Oh, really?
Is there anybody on Zoom who wanted to comment?
Not that I can see, no.
Just, I think there are people here. That's the next door neighbor. The neighbor just.
Because they're not being honest. That's not being used for administrative offices right now. It's being used for housing. And the homeowner next door just left. And he's going to sell his house. One of the few owner occupied houses on that block. Unity House is not being honest. And I think that needs to be at least set into the record. Obviously, that has nothing to do with your authority and the scope of your authority, but I think you should keep in mind which actors you're working with. They do tremendously good work, and in this case, they are not. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I'll mention that we did receive one written comment in opposition of this project, which has been, I believe it was sent to all the commissioners, and that'll be filed with the minutes as well.
Could the applicant comment on the current use of the property? Because I know that there was some questions raised in the public comment about the current administrative use.
As far as Chazen is aware, and I believe as far as the architect is aware on the project, that this was an administrative use. We walked through the building, I believe last week. And when I walked through it, I didn't see beds. I saw office space. As to what's going on in the current building, I am not
So if there is no other public comment, I'll turn then to commissioner comments on the site plan.
I don't have any comments on the site plan. I guess my concern is that this is, I don't think we've dealt with this before, this building.
No,
This-
you mean previous approval?
Right.
No, I don't think,
Okay. Or a
not
current
not
approval.
since, not
So-
since my time on the
Yeah.
commission, no, not in the last
Okay.
5-6 years.
No, but so what we're saying is that there was a change of use that was already approved by zoning.
Correct.
Okay, so the current use being proposed.
Yeah.
Is a situational crisis center.
Yeah.
We are considering that use similar to,
Community residential facility.
thank you. So that
Which is
use
allowed.
was,
I don't think it really is apples to apples.
They were granted a use variance by the zoning board.
That's,
correct. And the-
that's,
and the- and
What
the-
they're
and the variance
proposing
board-
is allowed.
correct, and the ZBA is well aware of what is being proposed.
Okay.
It was not presented as anything other than a situational crisis center.
Yeah.
For those
but that is
experiencing
not the same
acute
as a
symptoms of
residential,
mental
a
illness.
regular residential community house.
Correct, but
Residence. That's,
correct, but that is what it is classified as.
and they have
The ZBA
approved
has
it.
granted it.
Yeah.
So that it's not up for debate.
You're saying because the code doesn't include something specialized for
The
a
code, the code
crisis.
does not have a specific use for situational crisis center. However, it is a similar enough use to other uses defined in our code. It was classified that way by the code department. It's been reviewed that way and it was approved that way.
But the point is that the applications disclosed what the actual.
Correct.
So the
nature of
judgment
use
was
is.
made by ZBA.
Much like we don't
that
have a
it
use of
fits,
self-storage.
Similar.
It
or
was
rock climbing
considered
gyms.
warehouse and 494 River's been approved.
Yeah, or a
Right.
rock climbing gym, which is.
Correct. We don't have a rock climbing gym use.
Right.
We have a gym use or an athletic facility use.
Right.
Right.
So-
It's similar to that. These are people living together and sharing common spaces, and that's how we define those facilities. Okay, they
Right.
share certain uses. If this was something where the residents didn't share any uses and there was no common theme to the area, then it would be classified as something different, perhaps multifamily or
right.
boarding
No,
house or
They're
something
talking
else,
about a group facility, and we have many of them in Troy, but we do not have one like this, to my knowledge, which is why Unity House is proposing one, because this is a very serious issue, acute mental illness manifesting.
Correct. I mean, we do have other facilities that provide those services within the city, but they're more of a hospital setting than
Right.
this type of setting.
Right, so
So, yeah.
I think honestly, what you're asking is why wasn't it classified as a medical facility versus a resident?
I don't know. I
What
don't
was
know.
the term used or what they did? Put it under-
Situational crisis
No, no.
residence facility?
You
Oh,
s- the
community residential. facility.
Community residential. So what you're asking is why community residential facility versus some sort of medical designation? But I think the point is the decision has been made.
The decision has been made, and part of the confusion may be from the fact that due to the nature of this facility, Unity House, under the New York State Mental Hygiene Law, would be exempt from your zoning, and they could use
Do
it
it
as a, they can designate the location and receive approval from the city outside of the purview of the zoning powers of the city.
didn't
Unity
follow
House
any.
chose to subject themselves to the zoning authority and the planning authority of the city by requesting a use variance and then site plan approval. But under state citing laws, they could have went directly around the zoning and planning powers of the city.
Those citing laws that he's referencing, correct me if I'm wrong, they're similar to the way the school district. You've never seen a proposal from the school district. All
Yeah,
the schools were renovated last
They
summer,
have
or
authority,
some of them
yeah.
are still being renovated now. They're allowed to do that because they're not subject to our zoning laws. They're subject to state ed. So I believe that's similar to
Yeah,
what you're talking
it's
about in
analogous,
terms of health, medical facilities.
That's a
They're here out of a
public,
courtesy, is essentially what we're saying. So we can comment on the site plan and provide input on the site plan. Or
Or not.
they can just go build it.
Or not, yeah. Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. The other thing that's interesting about this building, this was the site where Unity House was formed. That when there was no Unity House, this was something else. Then when there was Unity House, it was formed in this building. This is a very historic site. And I'm sure that Unity House is very committed to dealing with whatever comes up. The issue is things will come up in a facility like this. This is not to be compared with a regular
Yeah.
community residence. So I guess the question I have is, do we want to vote on it tonight? Again, inadequate notification. It hasn't been on the agenda since it just went on Monday night. Do we want to vote on it or do what?
I'm not clear on the inadequate notification that you keep referencing.
The agenda was not posted till sometime on Monday. And in the past, the commission has done 7 days. That's gone down to like 4 days. This was 2.5. It doesn't matter to me. I'm kind of, don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying. We have no authority, so go ahead. So.
Again, we're in compliance with the open meetings law as of Monday. As of yesterday, the open meetings law was amended. The governor signed a new law into effect where there are new requirements of posting documents that are going to be considered by a meeting as now part of the open meetings law. I don't know the effective date of that, but that was signed yesterday. But we are in compliance with the open meetings law, which up until yesterday didn't have a specific requirement for an agenda being posted. Custom and practice in the city is something completely different, but I think you do have the ability to act on this like you had the ability to act on everything
Oh,
else.
yes,
this evening.
I agree. But it is a custom and it is a better practice to give 7 days. So in the future. I don't know what to do.
I have some actual site plan comments. That was not meant as a slide, to be clear. Knowing now that this is going to be a facility meant for people going through traumatic experiences or, potential medical emergencies, I'm just noticing that it seems like a lot of access is going to be through staircases, and I'm imagining there's probably a higher likelihood for first responders needing access to this facility. Stretchers, things like that, having to have access to it. Stairs could be problematic. So just thinking about egress paths, it's just my first takeaway when I'm looking at the plan.
So the project does have, I believe it's like 2 steps, right off of 8th Street, right off of the public sidewalk to get into the building, as well as the side door that has the accessible ramp that is about 3 to 3.5 feet wide. So there is access into the building.
And is the whole building accessible from those entries?
Yes, that's a ramp. That's how the building is. Yes.
And people from the far parts of the building can all get there. It's not like
Well, there's a basement door in the back of the building that will have I think it's 1 step. We just finished grading the back of the building, but it'll have 1 step into the basement of the building. However, due to the slope, the grade change between 8th Street and the back of the property, you need those stairs to get back up to 8th Street. It's a pretty much 4-on-1 slope. So we need to put stairs in to get back there. But there is access into the basement from the rear of the building through the existing basement door.
How many people would potentially be living there?
6 bedrooms. So 6, there is single bedrooms. 1 on the 1st floor, which is accessible, and 5 on the 2nd floor.
Is there changes being proposed to curb lines for creating the parking space?
No.
Installing drop curb or something?
There is an existing, that whole curb is currently flush with the road right now.
Okay, no big
And
deal.
so we are not touching the existing concrete sidewalk right of way. Anything that is asphalt is what we're removing. So we're not touching the concrete, we're not touching 8th Street, we're not touching the curb. We're just removing the existing parking.
And do you have any plans to be milling in that area or dropping your asphalt elevation to pick up curb reveal?
Now, again, it would be my comments would be similar to 95 Hill Street in that if some of this work damages the sidewalk, that it be replaced, appropriately, even if the materials today are asphalt, they're not, it's concrete in that area. But if the concrete sidewalk sustains damage from vehicles coming in and out or what have you, that it be repaired. The drop curb would have to remain given the orientation of the parking. Typically we would ask that the parking, again, similar to 95 Hill Street, provide the ability for vehicles to back up without backing out onto the street. However, given this particular site, that isn't advisable, seeing as the removal of that asphalt is to address an existing drainage concern from the residents. So in order to provide turning on that site, we would have to add more pavement than is there today.
And due to the slope, it's not.
Correct.
It's not feasible.
It's not.
We looked at it.
Yeah, and I just don't have a concern with that. There's other residents on 8th Street that have something similar.
So there's no proposed changes to the structure itself, just the site around it.
They're going to do cosmetic improvements, paint, removing some rotted wood and putting in new, but the outside the structure is what it's going to be. All the work is being done on the interior.
I guess where my mind is at is just thinking through what provisions are being made to, for lack of a better word, isolate any disturbance caused by the use of the building from the community around it.
So currently the front door does have like a fob system for their security system. The side door will be getting a fob system as well. So I can't go and just open the door. They are going to be installing exterior lighting that is going, I don't believe it's going to be motion sense just due to the proximity of the road and the road downhill of this, but they are going to have exterior lighting. We are installing a new chain link fence at 6 foot tall where the existing chain link fence was damaged due to tree fall, and that's going to enclose the back patio area. The site changes are minimal. It's going to continue to function from an exterior standpoint the way it does now. All the changes are being done on the interior.
Do you anticipate more traffic trips to the building than, I guess, it's not that much different than a multifamily, but.
Well, it would be staff, it wouldn't be the
Right.
residents.
Just trying to think about.
Is that, when you just talk about that fence, is that a containment fence in the back deck? So the deck is connected to the house and then that is contained by a fence?
Yeah, so from the corner of the building on the side where the stairs are, from that building corner, perpendicular to the property line in the rear, we are going to, there is an existing fence there right now. The fence that we're showing is on the western property line, and that bends at roughly that 45-degree angle because there's a giant oak tree there that we're going to try and keep in place. So that whole back patio is enclosed, and there is one gate that accesses to the sidewalk that goes to the stairs.
I have no other comments.
Okay, so we can act tonight. This is a type 2 action, so no secret review is necessary. So the only question is whether or not we have enough information to approve the site plan, or if we feel we need anything further.
Okay, just one clarifying again. If someone comes out, somebody that lives there, comes out of the building onto that deck, there is a fence.
Yes.
There's also said there's a gate.
Yes.
That gate open and they could just walk away, or
That I do not know if Unity House is going to chain that gate, but there is a gate there, and that is the only way out of the patio. Or you go into the basement door and then have to go through the building.
So this needs the seeker approval?
It doesn't, no,
Just site plan.
just site plan approval. So
Well, shall I move site plan approval?
I will second it.
all those in favor, Barbara Higbee,
Yes.
Suzanne Spellin,
No.
Roddy Yagan,
Yes.
Anthony Moan, yes. Motion carries 3-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.